Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto's friends find out about his childhood. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Uzumaki Naruto. It was a name that carried much weight in the village hidden in the leaves, Konoha. It was not respected, but feared, spoken as if it belonged to some particularly evil person or vile disease. An outsider would have been shocked to see that the owner of said name was merely a child. He was small for his age, with sunshine blonde hair and sparkling blue eyes. A huge smile was always seen plastered across his whisker-marked face as he paraded through town on his way to the ninja academy. At first glance he seemed like a simple happy-go-lucky child, not a care in the world. But if someone actually stopped to pay attention, they would see that this particular child had lived through pure hell. On the day of Naruto's birth, the Kyuubi no Kitsune had been killed by the Yondaime Hokage. In actuality, it had been sealed into the stomach of the helpless newborn. His second day of life had brought the first attempt on his life. The Sandaime had been very hard-pressed to keep him alive in those first few weeks, which caused him to create the law that no one was allowed to speak of the demon fox being sealed inside the infant on pain of death. When it had finally been deemed safe enough to place him in an orphanage, he was treated with the love and care one might give a cockroach. Given little more than table scraps to eat and beaten daily. He found respite from the constant agony only when he was allowed to curl up in his corner of the dark basement under a moth-eaten blanket to sleep. Despite the Sandaime's law that the children not be told of his condition, Naruto had no friends. The other orphans saw the way he was treated and immediately knew that there was something wrong with the blonde. Even if the caretakers had allowed him near enough to the other children to play, it only would have resulted in them all running away screaming. On his third birthday, Naruto received an additional present to the exceptionally harsh beating that always came on October 10th. He was kicked out of the orphanage. It was a miracle that he managed to survive the year he spent on the streets of Konoha. In that year he scrounged through garbage cans for food and learned to sleep in any form of shelter he could find. He also learned to avoid people as much as possible, for every time he ran into someone he would get beaten in some way. The worst by far was the young ninja who decided to try out his new Kaiden jutsu on him. The third-degree burns that covered his body went untouched by the medics at the hospital, just like every other affliction that affected him. Were it not for unspeakably fast healing, he would have either died or been covered in horrible scars. It was safe to say that he owed his survival that year to three things. First and foremost, to the stubbornness of the demon residing in his stomach. Second, to the fact that temperatures in Fire Country almost never got down to freezing. And last but not least, to the intervention of the Sandaime when he had been chased down by an extremely violent mob on the day of his fourth birthday. Yet another wonderful birthday present. After a few days in the hospital, where the doctors and nurses were literally forced to care for him, Naruto had found himself in the Hokage's office, where the old man had been astonished by the 4-year-old boy's incredibly colorful language, no doubt learned from his attackers, and his malnourished form. That was the first day Naruto would ever be able to remember someone being kind to him, and it threw the young boy for a loop. After that day, Naruto was given his own apartment and living allowance. That was also the day that the attacks severely decreased. Naruto was now only beaten a few times a month, whether people saw him or not. Although the cold stares of the villagers remained fixed on the boy wherever he went, the lack of open hostility was a welcome change. This miracle was of course thanks to the Anbu the newly dubbed Ojii-san had assigned to guard him. During this time Naruto learned how to read and, despite the librarian's objections, spent hours in the public library learning as much as he could. This was also the time that he developed his mask. The large grin and goofy attitude that made so many think he was carefree was perfect for hiding the pain he felt, not only from others but from himself. It was the first defense mechanism he ever came up with. Smile and no one will know. When he was 6, although still very young, Naruto was allowed to join the ninja academy. At first he had been hopeful that this would allow him to make friends. But it was not to be. All the children had been warned by their parents to stay away from that Uzumaki kid. This of course did not make him look on the village any better. Which caused him to come up with defense mechanism number 2. When the villagers get you down, don't get mad, get even. With a good prank, revenge can be a humorous thing. As if being shunned by his classmates wasn't bad enough, Naruto quickly discovered that the teachers were trying to make him fail. They all seemed to be much harder on him during practical lessons than the other students. They would also erase some of his answers on tests so that they could give him lower marks. Thus the birth of defense mechanism number 3. Trying to excel in class is pointless, act stupid and people will leave you in relative peace. These 3 principles were rules that Uzumaki Naruto lived by. He became so good at his act that the real him practically disappeared, until his 10th birthday, when it all came crashing down on him, with the birth of defense mechanism 4. Naruto had learned by then that the best thing to do on October 10th was to hide away in his apartment. He sat in his small bedroom listening to the festival going on outside. The festival celebrating Kyuubi's demise that he would never be able to attend. On that particular night the Anbu that was assigned to guard him had been rather careless in his duties, choosing to instead partake in some sake and, after getting rather tipsy, enjoy the fireworks display. No one noticed the man who snuck into the Jinchuriki's apartment, nor would anyone have cared if they had seen. Naruto was completely shocked when he felt the kunai tear into his flesh. Once again he was thrown into a world of pain and torment as the man called for the death of the demon. Anyone who did hear the screams of agony coming from the apartment complex didn't care, for they knew who lived there. It was when the man was holding the barely living boy against the wall by his throat, and plunging a kunai deep into his stomach, that the Kyuubi decided to give the boy a most terrible gift. Defense mechanism 4, touch me and feel my pain. The next morning, when an Anbu came to start his shift, it was to find Naruto curled up in a corner covered in dried blood. His attacker lay on the floor staring up at the ceiling with glassy eyes muttering incoherently. The dog-masked Anbu had never seen anything like the man on the floor. It was as if he had been placed in some terrible and powerful genjutsu. But there was no way the child cowering in the corner could be capable of such a feat. He stepped towards the young boy. Naruto, what happened here? Don't touch me. The Anbu was shocked by the normally cheerful boy's outburst. He reached out towards him. Give me your hand and I'll take you to see the Hokage. The boy shrank even further into the corner. Stay back. Naruto, I'm not going to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you too. The old Hokage sat at his desk wearily. Never before had he seen anything like it. Naruto's attacker seemed to have had a mental overload. It had taken Yamanaka Inoichi's special talents to bring the man out of his semi-comatose state, and even then he was a complete mess. He didn't even have to send the man to Ibiki to find out what had happened. As soon as he had seen Naruto he fell to the floor in a quivering heap, admitting to everything he had done. The Sandaime could hardly blame him for his fear of the child this time. The Anbu, codename Inu, came into the office that morning with the man slung over his shoulder, young Naruto trailing behind him. It had taken Inu several minutes of promising not to touch the boy under any circumstances to get him to leave the tiny apartment. Even then Naruto had insisted on completely covering himself with a blanket. Hokage-sama, I found this man in Naruto's apartment this morning. Apparently he attacked the child, but I have no idea what's wrong with him now. I don't know how badly Naruto is hurt either, he won't let me near him. With that Inu dropped the man onto the floor. The Sandaime looked into the man's eyes. He tried several things but did not get a reaction. Finally he had sent for Inoichi as it was obviously a mental problem of some sort. Then he turned his attention to the 10-year-old boy. All right Naruto, let's see how bad it is this time. Naruto timidly let the blanket fall, revealing the dried blood that covered him. The Sandaime reached out for the boy, who quickly flinched away, but not fast enough. The old man's fingers brushed against his skin. In that instant the Hokage's mind flashed with horrible images of torture and sadness so strong he seemed to be feeling them himself. As soon as his fingers left the boy the images faded, but still he had been hit hard. He knew that Naruto had lived a hard life, but he never could have imagined exactly how horrible it really was. He had seen but a glimpse of what this child had been put through, and the only thing that kept him from crying out had been the years of shinobi experience. A normal person would have been brought to their knees by the pure agony of it, and he had a strong suspicion that was what happened to the man on the floor of his office. Inoichi later confirmed Sarutobi's hunch. It was amazing what the boy had lived through, and yet he never hated the villagers. He never stopped fighting, never stopped believing that one day things would change. He bore the pain of his life with a grin, displaying a will of fire like none he had ever seen before, and he was only 10 years old. Doubtless he would become the greatest of Hokages one day. Sarutobi sighed in exhaustion. He had been sitting at his desk trying to figure out this puzzle for hours. It appeared that the Kyuubi had somehow managed to turn the boy's pain into a powerful weapon. The problem was the child could not turn it off. Unless he found a way to control this curse, he would never be able to touch anyone again. A sigh escaped from his mouth. No child deserved the fate of the Jinchurichi, and now this new development on top of that had left Naruto scared and confused. As much as he hated the idea of Naruto learning of the Kyuubi, the boy needed answers. The door creaked open, revealing Inu. Behind him trailed Naruto. Again the old man sighed. Gone was the brightly colored jumpsuit that screamed for attention. He was now dressed in all black, completely covered from head to toe. Bright yellow hair hidden by a dark hood, fingers encased in leather gloves, sandals replaced by thick boots. The whisker marks on his cheeks were now covered by a cloth face mask. Even the sparkling blue eyes had been shadowed by dark sunglasses. The door closed behind them with a loud thud. With one last sigh, the Hokage lifted his hands and placed a sealing jutsu on the room, preventing any sound from escaping. Inu, please remove your mask. The man did as he was told, revealing a handsome face before quickly covering it with a cloth face mask like the one he had given the boy. Naruto, I would like you to meet Hitaki Kakashi. He will be your caretaker from now on. In lieu of your current condition, I feel it wise that you be taken out of the academy. You will continue your training with Kakashi and you will return for the graduation exam when you are 13. If you pass, your genin squad will be placed under him. Kakashi and I will both do our best to help you through this ordeal, and perhaps someday we will find a way to reverse it. The boy nodded in understanding and looked up at the man beside him. Kakashi glanced down at him and gave him a smile, made evident by the way his one visible eye crinkled up. Naruto had never met this strange man with the gravity-defying silver hair, but he was the fourth person to ever smile at him in such a way. The first three being the old man, the owner of his favorite ramen stand, and his sensei Iruka. This, along with the fact that the man was almost as covered up as he was, gave him some much-needed reassurance. Now, onto the most probable reason for your situation. The Hokage took a deep breath. He never thought he would have to explain this to a 10-year-old child. Understand, Naruto, that this information is an S-class secret and it in no way changes who you are. Naruto nodded his head nervously. 10 years ago on the night of your birth, as you well know, this village was attacked by the Kyuubi no Yoko. What you don't know is that the Yondaime was unable to kill the monster. The only thing he could do to protect the village from total annihilation was to seal the demon away. Unfortunately, the only thing strong enough to contain the beast was a human whose chakra coils had yet to develop. So he did the only thing he could do. He sealed the Kyuubi inside a newborn baby whose umbilical cord had just been cut. At that moment, Naruto's whole world felt like it was going to shatter. That was the reason why the village hated him so much. That was why he was ignored and abused. He was a monster. Tears threatened to fall from his face when he felt a comforting hand on his shoulder. He looked up to see Kakashi looking down at him, his expression soft. I know what you're thinking, Naruto, and you are not the Kyuubi. You are his container, the only thing that protects this village from the demon's wrath. When my sensei sealed the demon inside you, he hoped you would be seen as the hero you really are. The villagers just fear what they don't understand. It was nice to receive comfort from someone, and the tears in his eyes spilled down his cheeks in gratitude. Kakashi is exactly right, Naruto. You are just as human as I am, which is why I instated a law that no one was to speak of the burden you carry. I had hoped this would give you a chance to make friends, but it appears to have not worked. I'm telling you this now because I believe it was the Kyuubi who has caused this strange power. You of all people have a right to know why this is happening to you. 3 years passed quickly and, as it was fated to happen every year, the dreaded day of October 10th arrived. The day found a 13-year-old Naruto lying in his room staring up at the glass ceiling, naked as the day he was born. The glass had been imperative to the room as it provided him with the sunlight he could not get while outside. The nudity was a personal preference of Naruto, being forced to wear so many cloths whenever outside. There was a knock on the door. Come in. Kakashi entered the bright room unperturbed by his student's lack of modesty. He understood that the clothes Naruto wore had become a prison for the boy, a constant reminder of what he may never be able to experience. He was actually rather glad for the habit because it, along with the glass ceiling in his room, had allowed him to achieve a healthy sun-kissed complexion rather than a sickly pale pallor. Are you sure you're ready to return to the academy tomorrow? We can probably hold it off for another month at least, maybe 2. Naruto had become like a son to the Anbu-gon Jonin. It was only natural that he was nervous for the boy's return to normal life. I'm going to have to go back eventually, Kashi, may as well be sooner rather than later. Besides, 2 of the people from my class are going to be on my team, so I had better get used to being around them. It will be less awkward when you have to train all 3 of us together. A sigh escaped Kakashi's lungs. I suppose you're right. It's going to be weird when it's not just the 2 of us anymore. He grinned, this one actually visible as he had stopped wearing the mask when they were alone. Much like Naruto had stopped wearing clothes. After a few awkward weeks, the 2 recluses had learned to inhabit the same space peacefully. After a few months they had formed a familial bond. By the time the first year had passed, they had gotten to a point of comfort where nothing seemed awkward anymore. They had been undeniably good for each other. Iruka's coming over after classes are over, so at least make sure you put on some shorts by then. I'm going to go and pick up some ramen from Ichiraku for dinner. You should at least get to eat your favorite food on your birthday. Thanks, Kashi. Kakashi left Naruto to his indoor sunbathing. Naruto smiled as he looked up at the clear blue sky. Kakashi never made a big deal out of his birthday. The only special treatment he got was being allowed to stay home rather than go out to continue his training. Naruto had never asked for this, he never had to, he and Kakashi understood each other perfectly. It would never be a happy day for him, filled with too many painful memories. October 10th was a cursed day. The day Kakashi was officially assigned as his caretaker, he had insisted on touching him. Naruto had protested profusely, of course, but the older man grabbed his arm, ripped of his glove and forcibly held onto his hand. He refused to let go until all the horrible events that Naruto had lived through had finished washing over him. He felt every hit, heard every insult and experienced every minute of sadness. He could have let go at any time, but he didn't. He went through it all without fear, and when he was done he did something no one had ever done before. He hugged him. He later told him about all the traumatic experiences he had been through in his lifetime. That day they found out the only currently known way to negate the power given him by the Kyuubi. In order to touch him without suffering the effects was to experience all the horrors he had been through in his life without breaking down, and accepting it. To this day, the only one to achieve such a feat had been Kakashi, which was why they felt so comfortable around each other. There was no longer anything for either of them to hide. They both knew exactly why the other was the way they were. After getting used to the other's presence, they had both learned to drop their masks, both physical and emotional, while alone together. The next day came all too quickly for both of them. As the academy came into view for Naruto, he couldn't help but feel nervous. Yesterday seemed ages ago, sitting in his kitchen with Kakashi and Iruka eating ramen and talking about nothing. Despite the copious amount of clothing he was wearing, he couldn't help but shiver as he watched the other kids talking without a care in the world. Kakashi had been following him by rooftop on the way, but he could not follow him into the classroom. That was all up to Naruto. "You okay, kid?" The voice came from behind him where he knew Kakashi was standing, pretending to read his perverted book. "Yeah, just nervous I guess. I haven't had to interact with so many people in 3 years. Those kids used to hate me as much as their parents, and now I have to face them again knowing that I can make them suffer with a single touch. I mean, what if I can't control myself? You being able to control yourself is one thing I'm not worried about. You would never put someone through that torment without a viable reason, and even then you would think twice about it. That's just the kind of person you are." Naruto couldn't help but smile at Kakashi's comment. "Now, you see that kid in the blue?" He received a nod from the 13-year-old. "His name is Uchiha Sasuke, and out of your class he is the only one who will definitely end up on your team." "How do you know that?" "The council will see to it, just like the Hokage is doing to you. He has the potential to wield the Sharingan, and as such they are going to want me to train him. I don't want you to pay attention to him exclusively, but try to get to know him a bit. It may make things easier in the long run." "I can do that." "Good. Now don't worry too much. I made sure that you were put in Iruka's class again so that you would at least be around one friendly face. I also put some cup ramen in your lunch, but please eat the apple I packed too." The boy couldn't help but smirk at the older ninja, even though the man couldn't see it. Yes, mommy. Kakashi didn't bother to mask the laugh that escaped him. Everyone in the village knew he tended to giggle while reading his smut. Shut up and get to class, Gaki, or you'll be late. I'll be here when class lets out. Alright, I'll see you later, Kashi. As the kid began to jog towards the door, he heard a soft, "Good luck, Naru," from his guardian. Then the man vanished. The people who managed to get close to Naruto in his short lifetime were few and far between. As such, each one was precious to him. Kakashi was like the father he never had, Tuchi and Ayame were uncle and cousin, the Hokage took the place of grandfather. Iruka was like a caring older brother. He was always there with advice and support, and always with a kind smile on his face. He had never felt as awkward as when he walked into the classroom full of 13-year-olds. His little chat with Kakashi had in fact made him late. "Ah, nice of you to join us." He turned to see Iruka's smiling face and was immediately calmed. "Class 1 would like you to meet our new student Uzumaki Naruto. He will be joining us for the remainder of the year. I want all of you to treat him with kindness and respect." A blonde girl raised her hand and waved it through the air impatiently. "Iruka-sensei, where has Naruto been the past 3 years, and why is he wearing more clothes than Shino?" "Naruto has been in the hospital with a rare skin infection. They were able to cure him, but his skin is now very sensitive to light." Again the blonde's hand went into the air. "No, Ino, what he has is not contagious. How did you know I was going to ask that, sensei? If I was your age and was told that one of my classmates had contracted a horrible skin disease, I would want to know if it was contagious too. Now I want you all to treat Naruto like you would treat any other student. He is no different from any of you. Naruto, you may sit next to Nara Shikamaru. Shikamaru, please raise your hand." No one moved. Naruto's immediate thought was that it was a malicious joke. He wasn't really surprised. Children had a tendency to be far crueler than they realized. "Nara, wake up, you lazy bum." A boy in the middle of the room with his brown hair in a messy ponytail that resembled a pineapple lifted his head from his desk. His eyes were visibly droopy with sleep and he yawned boredly. The first emotion Naruto felt was relief. He was not being mocked. The next thing to sink in was the sheer hilarity of the situation. Everyone in the class, who had all turned to see Shikamaru get yelled at for sleeping once again, were startled by the sound of laughter. True, many of them would snicker when one of their own got in trouble, but to outright laugh was simply unheard of. Once again their eyes were drawn to the strangely dressed kid at the front of the room. He was hunched over, clutching his sides as he laughed. The sound was bright and natural. It seemed very strange coming from the black-clad boy. Slowly it died down and he was able to straighten up. He lifted his glasses and wiped the tears from his eyes, briefly revealing the bluest eyes anyone in the class had ever seen. They were covered again so quickly most were uncertain if they had seen them at all. He quietly walked up to the pineapple-haired boy and took his seat. The boy simply glanced at him. For a moment it seemed as if he was going to question him on his choice of wardrobe. Then Shikamaru shrugged and put his head back down on the desk. Naruto heard him mumble, "Too troublesome," before he drifted off to sleep. Naruto had never been so grateful for laziness in his life. For now he was off the hook. He didn't want to go through the awkward lie the Hokage had come up with. He would be lucky if he didn't become a pariah in this class just as he had the last. Fortunately, the attention of the room was already leaving him. Apparently this group of kids was far more used to the abnormal than his last class had been. He began to relax as Iruka slipped into a dull lecture about something he had already been taught. As he droned on, all the students were either pulled into a near unconscious daze, or were paying careful attention, or so he thought. A lone girl with pink hair was paying very rapt attention to him. This occurrence was unusual in many ways. For one, she was considered a very attentive student. Her exemplary marks stood as a testament to that, and two, she never spared her attention on any boy other than the brooding hunk Uchiha Sasuke. Her name was Sakura, and other than the vibrantly pink color of her hair there was nothing remarkable about her. She was not considered beautiful, graceful, or exceptional. All those titles were held by her best friend turned rival Ino, and despite her constant screams that Ino would never get Sasuke, there was secretly no doubt in her mind that the platinum blonde would win. She was after all a very plain girl. Her brains were the only thing she had going for her, and she worked hard hoping that, if she were smart enough, Sasuke would look her way. As such, she always paid attention in class and studied more than any of her peers. So why was she jeopardizing her perfect grade point average on this weirdo in black? He was completely covered from head to toe, so she couldn't be staring because he was cute. Sure, the outfit was weird, but Shino wore almost as much clothing and sent off a far more powerful, "I'm creepy" vibe. Sure, he was mysterious, but so was Sasuke, and he was far more pleasing to the eye than this Naruto person. She supposed that she could pin her interest down to two things. First was his laugh. It had been warm and joyous, as if nothing could bring him down. It seemed so natural, and yet she got the feeling that he didn't have much occasion to really use it. Second had been his eyes. She had only seen them for a second. He had replaced his glasses so quickly, but she was sure she had seen them. They were the most beautiful pure blue she had ever seen. It was a crime that such eyes belonged to a boy, and an even bigger crime that he covered them up. She stared at him intently through the whole lecture and was quite perturbed that she had missed the entire lesson. Praying it had just been a review on past material, she pulled out her bento box. As she ate her homemade meal, her eyes once again traveled to the weird new kid. "So, you giving up on Sasuke and going for the new kid forehead?" Sakura's eye twitched with irritation. "I don't know what you're talking about, Ino pig." The blonde snorted in a very unladylike way, not realizing that the sound only reinforced the insult. "The idea of you being with a god like Sasuke is laughable, but Mr. Skin Disease over there seems right up your alley." Sakura noticed the boy tense, the ramen-laden chopsticks in his hand freezing halfway to his mouth. "Shut up, Ino, I think he can hear us." "What, you don't want me to broadcast your new crush?" Sakura had never felt so irritated with her one-time best friend. Was the blonde really that shallow? "First of all, Ino pig, I do not have a crush on Naruto. Second, don't talk about his condition like that. It's not his fault he got sick, and we should not hold that against him." Ino gave a huff at being called insensitive. "I don't see you running up to be his friend forehead." The scrape of the chair as Sakura stood was deafening. She gave Ino a defiant glare and marched down the steps toward Naruto's row. Naruto was shocked when the pretty pink-haired girl had stopped in front of him. He knew that she was one of the girls that had been talking about him, but he never imagined either would approach him. She smiled brightly, her green eyes twinkling as she stuck out her hand. "Hi, my name is Haruno Sakura. Welcome to our class." Naruto hesitantly reached out and took her hand, shaking it lightly. He couldn't help but smile at the look of relief on her face. "Thank you, Sakura-chan, you have no idea how much you doing that means to me." The months before the Genin exam went by quickly. Things at school were surprisingly good. Sure, he still got picked on and avoided by most of the class, but he did have a few friends. These included Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji, and Inazuka Kiba, none of whom cared what people said about him. He spent his days with them cloud-gazing, eating snacks and playing pranks, three of his favorite things. He was glad that the active hostility towards him had stopped 3 years ago when the Hokage had broadcasted who his new guardian was. Explaining why he couldn't go into certain stores or why random civilians attacked him would have been troublesome, as Shikamaru would say. He had a passing friendship with Uchiha Sasuke. He was arrogant and rather depressing for Naruto's tastes, but that was to be expected, and he was fun to tease. Sasuke in turn hung around him for two reasons. One, there was no air of pity or admiration surrounding the boy whenever he came into view. And two, most of his fangirls were so freaked out by Naruto's alleged skin disease that they would leave him alone when they hung out. Sakura held a special place in his heart. She had been the first person in the class to approach him, the first brave enough to shake his hand. Out of all the girls in their class, Sakura was one of the only ones willing to come within 10 feet of him. Ino being another one, not because she wanted to, but because she refused to be outdone, and that was where she usually found Sasuke. The other girl who didn't seem scared of him was Hinata, who had plucked up the courage to introduce herself after a week. He liked Hinata a lot. She was kind and polite and became like a sister to him. He had a sneaking suspicion that Kiba had a little thing for her, as he would perk up whenever she was around. Unfortunately, his attempts to show off for her usually ended up with him or someone else in the hospital. Iruka found himself with another headache in Naruto. The blonde fit in perfectly with the other delinquents of his class. He had become his worst nightmare as a student. He snuck food, slept and skipped class. He was his 3 least favorite students rolled into one. Despite the irritation he felt at the kid's behavior, he couldn't help but admire his ability to roll with everything life threw at him. Naruto sat in the almost empty room awaiting his turn for the genin exam. It was just him and Ino now, as they were going in alphabetical order. The silence was killing him. "So, how do you think Sasuke's doing in there?" Ino seemed startled at the sound of his voice, but she quickly recomposed herself. "My Sasuke-kun is doing great. There is no doubt in my mind that he will pass this exam with top marks." "Okay, are you nervous?" "Of course not, this test will be easy for someone as talented as me." "Yeah, I'm nervous too." Ino would have protested, but at that moment Mizuki came in to call Naruto into the exam room. As the boy left, she couldn't hide her anxiety anymore. "Good luck, Naruto." He turned around and smiled at her. As always, she couldn't see it through his mask, but everyone could tell when he smiled. He just sent off this warm, reassuring feeling. "Same to you, Ino." With that, he walked through the door and left Ino all by herself. Naruto had never really cared for Mizuki. Despite his smiles and kind attitude, there was always a layer of contempt hidden under the surface, and it doubled around Naruto. Mizuki was a fraud. At least the other villagers and ninjas showed their hatred of him outright. He entered the exam room to see Iruka. "Okay Naruto, I need you to create 3 functional bunshin." Naruto suddenly felt very nervous. Iruka-sensei, I can't do a regular bunshin." Iruka was disappointed. Kakashi should have made sure he knew this one. It was an important skill for a young shinobi. "And why can't you do it?" "Well, you see, apparently my chakra is too concentrated to be formed into something as delicate as a bunshin. But I was taught a variation in case this happened." Iruka nodded. Kakashi had probably taught him one of the clone jutsu he copied. "Very well, as long as they are functional you will pass." Naruto nodded happily. He concentrated his chakra and placed his fingers into a T-shaped seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. There were 3 puffs of smoke, and when they cleared, 4 corporeal Narutos stood undoubtedly smirking at the shocked look on their sensei's face. "Kakashi says that as I get better with my control there will be less smoke." Iruka was speechless, not only because of what Naruto had done but because Kakashi had the gall to teach a 13-year-old a forbidden technique. He was so shocked that he missed the look of rage on Mizuki's face, but Naruto didn't. "Congratulations Naruto, you pass with flying colors. And if you hadn't chosen to slack off all year you probably could have been first in your class." "Thanks Iruka." Naruto took his headband and tied it onto his right arm. "Now you better let Ino in here before she has a nervous breakdown." With that he left the room so Ino could have her turn, thoughts of Mizuki with that look on his face in his head. As he came outside he was greeted by the sight of his friends all with headbands being congratulated by their families. Rather than break up the happy moment he went over to his favorite swing and sat down to watch, forever the observer. He watched Ino run out of the school straight into the waiting arms of her father, her hite-8 wrapped around her waist. "It's nice to watch families, isn't it?" Naruto looked up to find Kakashi perched in the branch over his head. "Yeah, but also a little depressing since I'll never know my real one." You have to admit though, that as far as fake families go ours is a pretty good one." Naruto smiled. "Yeah, it is. I got you a present for passing the genin exam." A small plain box was dropped into his lap. "I hope you like them. They should come in handy in the future." Naruto opened the box to reveal a new pair of black leather gloves. These ones with metal plates on the backs like Kakashi's. It was a simple gift, but Naruto knew that to Kakashi being allowed to wear armor of any kind was like a rite of passage into the shinobi world. He removed his old gloves and replaced them with his new ones. One was emblazoned with the leaf symbol of his village, the other with the spiral that signified his name. "They're great Kashi, perfect fit. I'm glad you like them. How about we get out of here and go to Ichiraku? All that family mushiness is starting to get to me." Naruto stood up from his swing and stretched. "I agree. But before we go, can you do me a favor? I suppose, depending what it is. Can you summon Pakun and have him follow Mizuki? Something about him just sets me on edge." Kakashi had learned long ago that Naruto's instincts about people were rarely wrong. Being forced to see people at their worst for most of his life had made him a great judge of character. "All right, I guess I can do that. But if nothing happens then I get to be 2 hours late tomorrow." "You're going to end up doing that anyway." But this way you can't yell at me because it will be your fault." "You manipulative bastard. Fine, but if I'm right you show up only a half hour late, no exceptions." "Deal." They shook on it. Mizuki stood before the giant scroll. He couldn't help but snicker at his own brilliance. After all, it took an especially talented ninja to sneak into the Hokage Tower without a hitch. All he had to do now was grab the scroll and get out. His fingers brushed against the scroll. "How nice to see you here, Mizuki, but might I ask what you were doing with the forbidden scroll?" Mizuki jumped about a mile into the air. He turned around only to be greeted by the Hokage and Kakashi. "Perhaps you would like to discuss this little incident in my office?" Kakashi grabbed the traitor roughly by the collar and dragged him out behind the old man. When they walked into the office, they were greeted by Naruto and Ibiki. "I told you he was up to something." Kakashi sighed as he forced the Chunin down into a seat. "Yeah, you did, and as I promised, I'll only be a half-hour late tomorrow." Naruto couldn't help but laugh at his very disgruntled guardian. "Hey, be grateful that I'm not making you show up on time. Besides, you should know better than to bet against me in anything, you always lose. That's just because you have the devil's luck. Enough, after all, we do have a traitor in our midst. So Mizuki, are you going to tell me why you decided to steal the forbidden scroll, or am I going to have to hand you over to Ibiki?" The ex-teacher scoffed. "You'll have to do your worst because I'll never talk. Who would ever want to be a part of a village that houses a demon?" Ibiki let a sadistic grin creep across his face. "Oh, you shouldn't have said that. We have a special punishment for traitors like you. Naruto, if you would please." The boy nodded. Kakashi and Ibiki held the confused Chunin down as the new leather gloves slowly came off. Naruto hesitantly stepped forward. He didn't like the idea of purposefully doing this to someone, but it had been decided when Pakun told them of Mizuki's plans that this would be the best course of action. Shutting his eyes, he steeled himself for the screaming to come and placed his bare hands on the man's exposed forearm. The traitor's eyes widened in shock as all the horrible images flashed before them. The images so powerful he could actually feel the pain. Soon he couldn't hold it back any longer. He screamed, the sound so loud that it echoed throughout the room and traveled out the window to cover the whole village. Naruto jerked his hands away. He couldn't take the sound of someone going through his pain any longer. Ibiki smiled. "Thank you, Naruto. His tongue should be very loose now. You would have a real future in the interrogation department." The boy was shaking slightly. "Thank you, Ibiki-san, but I don't think I have the stomach for what you do." The large man shrugged. "Very few people do, kid, and I think that speaks well of them. Thank you for your assistance, Naruto. Both you and Kakashi will be receiving a rank pay for this." The Hokage gestured for Ibiki to leave with the prisoner. "I will inform you both of the situation after the team assignments tomorrow. And by the way, congratulations on passing the exam, Naruto." Naruto watched as Mizuki was dragged bodily out of the room for questioning. He could tell by how ghostly pale his skin was that, had he held on a minute longer, Mizuki would have ended up like the first man he did that to. He shivered and replaced his gloves, then followed Kakashi out of the office for some well-deserved rest. After all, he had a big day tomorrow. The next day found Naruto at the academy for one last time. He was early. The events of the previous night had made him restless. He couldn't help but give the room a once-over before going up to his seat. He had wanted to come to the academy for years and got accepted at 6. He was the youngest kid to get in that year, most not allowed to apply until 8. The Hokage had found it best that he learned to defend himself. He was coming up on the graduation exam when he was attacked. The day he was forced to leave the academy nearly broke his heart. As if being attacked and doomed to a life without the ability to touch others wasn't enough, his dream of proving himself to the village would be postponed by 3 years. True, his odds of passing that year had been slim. He had difficulty with chakra control and his grades were not very high. Still, he might have been able to pull it off before 13. Naruto sighed and walked up to a seat in the middle of the room. He was only alone for a few minutes. Shino walked in and took his place in the back of the class. Sasuke was next to arrive. The boy was perpetually early, and he took his usual place beside Naruto. After that, all his fangirls came pouring in. As the noise level in the room rose, Naruto allowed himself to drift off to sleep. He was so exhausted by the previous night's events that he didn't even wake up for the usual scuffle between Sakura and Ino for the seat beside Sasuke. It was the persistent poking to his side that finally roused him. He woke with a start, backhanding the offending poker in the face. "Ow, damn it, Naruto, why'd you have to hit my nose?" Kiba sat there rubbing his now bruised nose. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at the look on his friend's face. Sorry Kiba. I didn't sleep well last night and you kinda startled me. Yeah, that's what I get for trying to do something nice. I was just trying to wake you up, now my nose might be broken. If this damages my sense of smell in any way you will pay. Oh calm down dog breath, if it was broken you would be bleeding right now. Why did you wake me up anyways? The boy rubbed at his eyes to stop the tearing and looked at his fellow prankster in irritation. I was trying to let you know that you slept through the team assignments. We have an hour for lunch then we meet our Junin senseis. What I slept through the whole thing. What team am I on? Relax Dobi you're on team 7 with me and Sakura. Naruto turned to look at the usually silent Uchiha. Really? Well other than being stuck with your emo ass that's not half bad. At least I'm not with any of the people who are scared of me. The Uchiha seemed rather irritated giving him the appearance of a ruffled cockatoo, what with his hairstyle. How many times do I have to tell you I am not emo? So Kiba, who are you teamed up with? Kiba forgot about his smarting nose and laughed at Sasuke's expense. The Uchiha was not used to being ignored, and Naruto was the only one with the gall to do it. I'm on team 8 with Shino and Hinata. Congratulations. Maybe if you're around her more you'll stop making such a fool of yourself whenever she comes within eyeshot. I do not make a fool of myself. Yes you do. The dog on Kiba's head barked and wagged his tail. See, even Akamaru agrees with me. Kiba slumped into his chair drumming his fingers. He grumbled something that sounded suspiciously like traitor. As Kiba continued to sulk Naruto took in the rest of the people in the room. Sasuke still seemed irritated with being ignored and had decided to deal with it by brooding as usual. This of course caused lots of girls to stare at him with stars in their eyes like always. His two most avid fangirls however were occupied in another heated argument. Apparently Ino was very upset with being stuck with Choji and Shikamaru. She was also jealous of Sakura for scoring a team with Sasuke on it. Everything was perfect. He was on a team with two people that weren't afraid of him. Both also had the potential to become really good friends. If Sakura grew out of her fangirldom and Sasuke got over his Avenger complex they could probably be a really good team. As it was they would probably be able to work together pretty well, which he knew would be pivotal for Kakashi. Team 7 had seen all the other teams walk out with their senseis. Sasuke was continuing to brood while Sakura got more and more irritable as she watched the seconds tick by on the clock. Naruto just continued the nap that Kiba had chosen to interrupt. He knew how long it would take Kakashi to get there. The door slid open and the silver-haired Junin stuck his head into the room, his one visible eye wandering to his three students lazily. You're late, the pink-haired Kunoichi screamed. Ah, the dulcet tones of a banshee. Was Naruto really friends with this girl? Speaking of which there was his little Gaki sleeping peacefully, not a care in the world. He showed up only a half-hour late for this? My first impression of you three is that I hate you. Now one of you wake him up and meet me on the roof. Sakura was shocked. He shows up a half-hour late and has the gall to say he hates us? Naruto woke up from his nap and looked at the clock. Half-hour late, has he gotten here yet? Yes, and he's waiting for us up on the roof. The boy stretched and let out a yawn. What's the problem with you two? He could have been much later. He was a half-hour late Dobi. This is supposed to be the guy who is going to teach us and he can't even show up on time. He also says he hates us. How are we supposed to work with him? Naruto got up and walked towards the door. As far as I'm concerned those are his problems, not mine. Besides you'd be surprised how quickly you get used to hate. Now I suggest we go and meet this guy on the roof before he decides to leave. They arrived on the roof to find Kakashi reading an orange book. About time you kids got here. Was Shorty over there really sleeping that hard? Hey, I'm not that short scarecrow, you're just tall. He was elbowed in the side by Sakura. Naruto, he's already decided that he doesn't like us, don't make things worse. Sasuke just rolled his eyes. Okay, so why don't we all just introduce ourselves so that I can go home and continue my reading? State your name, likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams. Sakura cleared her throat as she sat down. We already know each other from classes, so why don't you start sensei? The book was closed with a snap and he placed it in the kunai pouch at his hip. I suppose that makes sense. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. I like a lot, dislike less. My hobbies, you're not old enough. and my dreams are none of your business. You next, Pinky. Sakura was fuming, he hadn't told them anything at all. Fortunately, Naruto had decided to laugh as if the lack of information was hilarious. She punished him by smacking him upside the head. My name is Haruno Sakura. My likes are reading and a certain person. She glanced over at Sasuke and blushed. My dislikes are Ino Pig and people that make fun of others for no reason. My hobbies are reading, hanging out with friends, and… Again she glanced at Sasuke and blushed. My dreams for the future? She blushed even harder this time, then shook her head as if to clear it. I want to be the best kunoichi in Konoha. Kakashi sighed. He had expected a little bit more from her from how highly Naruto regarded her. Well, at least she isn't just a crazy fangirl. Alright, let's go emo kid, you next. Sasuke bristled. I am not emo. Kakashi put his hands up in a placating gesture while Naruto rolled on the ground in mirth. Even Sakura giggled lightly at Sasuke's uncharacteristic outburst. Alright, you're not emo. You're just a very sensitive young man in need of love and support. Sasuke looked about ready to kill the giggling man before him, but he took a deep breath in an attempt to recompose himself. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I don't particularly like anything. I dislike my fangirls. I want to kill my brother and no, I don't want to talk about it. The two other males present blinked at the rather short and disturbing introduction while Sakura sulked at his hatred of fangirls. Kakashi clapped his hands together, breaking the silence. Okay, I take it you've had therapy? Sasuke nodded. Maybe you should go back. Now it's your turn, short stuff. Naruto scowled. I told you I'm not short. I'm only 13, you jerk. I haven't hit my growth spurt yet. Kakashi's visible eye twitched. Will you just do the introduction? My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, training, pulling pranks and my friends. I hate people that blame others for things that aren't their fault. My hobbies are training and finding new ways to prank people. My dream is to become Hokage so that I can make sure that everyone in this village is safe and happy. Kakashi nodded. Alright, that's all for today. Meet me tomorrow at 8 AM Training Ground 13, for the real genin exams, and before you ask, the test yesterday was just to see if you had the potential for becoming a genin. Oh, and don't eat breakfast unless you like throwing up. With that he used the Shunshin Jutsu and left in a swirl of smoke and leaves. Naruto stretched and let out a yawn. Well, I guess I'll see you two tomorrow. Sasuke stood up to follow his friend. Yeah, I'm going home to practice my accuracy for the test. Sakura brightened at that. Can I come and practice with you, Sasuke? I could use some help with my shuriken throwing. Sasuke didn't even look back at her. I train alone. He was about to walk away when Naruto reached out and grabbed his shoulder. Why don't we all work on our accuracy together? After all, we have to get used to training with each other. Who knows, maybe getting used to working as a team will come in handy for tomorrow's test. Sasuke shrugged. Whatever, Dobi, it couldn't hurt. He continued towards the stairs. Naruto smiled back at Sakura and held out his hand to help her stand up. Come on, if we don't hurry he might decide that we are just dead weight. You know you didn't have to do that. I'm used to being rejected by him. She could feel the warmth and happiness that radiated from him every time he smiled, and could almost see the blue eyes she could never get out of her head sparkling behind his sunglasses. I know, but this way works out the best for all three of us. He received a smile in return for his kindness and understanding, and they followed after their teammate. So, where have you been all afternoon? He had made it back to the house around dusk to find Kakashi sitting at the table reading his porn. Dinner was already laid out, but unfortunately there was no ramen in sight. Kakashi had made teriyaki chicken, and as weird as it was, his meals were always good. He sat down and helped himself to chicken and mixed vegetables. I was out practicing accuracy with Sakura and Sasuke. Oh good, that means if I pass you three tomorrow I won't have to pound teamwork into your heads. Well, you won't have to do it to Sakura and me, but Sasuke could use a little pounding. Naruto shoveled some food into his mouth. This is good for not being ramen, by the way. I'm glad you approve of my non-ramen meal. So why do you think Sakura will be easier to work with? She seemed like one of those pain-in-the-ass fangirls to me. There's more to Sakura than first meets the eye. She may be obsessed with Sasuke, but she worked really hard in order to graduate. Even if she did it for the wrong reasons, it still proves that she is capable of doing it. Besides, she was the first person to approach me during school. What about Shikamaru? He was actually the first person to talk to you. Yeah, but he slept through Uruka's explanation about my skin disease. Sakura heard the whole thing. And then introduced herself to show up her friend Ino. You didn't hear the conversation. Sakura defended me when Ino started making fun of me. Just trust me when I say there is a lot more to Sakura than what first meets the eye. I think she'll surprise you. Kakashi was very tempted to bet on it, but his last loss was still too fresh on his mind. He had to learn to stop betting against Naruto. His character judgments were fantastic and he was the best card shark Kakashi had ever seen. While the Junin was lost in La La Land, Naruto had finished his meal. So, you want to tell me what tomorrow's test is? Kakashi smirked. I don't think so, kid. You have to figure it out just like everyone else. Just for asking that question, not only do you have to do the dishes, but I want 100 kicks and punches with right and left. Oh come on, that's a meta guide training technique, aka complete insanity. I don't know, it seems to work wonders for his student Rock Lee. Now get to it. You're going to want at least a few hours of sleep before my test. He couldn't help but chuckle as he watched his student clear the table and prepare for his training disguised torture session. That's what the Gaki gets for making me show up so early today. Naruto woke up at 7:30 the next morning sore as hell. He had to drag himself out of bed, then force his body into the stretches he did every morning. It took 10 minutes for the stretching to take effect. Slipping on a pair of boxers, he walked into the kitchen to see Kakashi sipping from a cup of coffee. He grabbed an apple and took a bite out of it. Morning, Kashi. Kakashi downed the rest of his liquid caffeine. Did you forget what I said about eating breakfast yesterday? The blonde looked him right in the eye as he took another bite. Nope, I just choose not to listen. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and I don't trust you, especially when it comes to one of your tests. Kakashi shrugged. Suit yourself. It's almost 8, I'm headed off to the monument, so I should see you again in about 2 maybe 3 hours. With that he left in puff of smoke and leaves. Naruto's eye twitched in annoyance as he took another bite of his apple. I have got to learn how to do that. He went into his room to start the arduous task of getting dressed. He arrived at training ground 13 to see his teammates already there. Not surprising considering he was a half-hour late. He immediately found his head being used as a punching bag by his pink-haired friend. Where the hell have you been? If our sensei had shown up before you, then you would have been in so much trouble. Naruto stood up, rubbing his head. I was training last night and didn't wake up until a half-hour ago. It takes a while to put on all these clothes and I had to eat breakfast. Sasuke scowled. Kakashi-sensei told us not to eat breakfast. Naruto watched Sakura nod vigorously at her crush's statement, making him sigh. I had a feeling you two would fall for that, which is why I brought fruit with me. It's not a good idea to skip breakfast. An empty stomach makes you weaker. The two could not really deny what Naruto said, and it was made 10 times harder when the fruit was right in front of them. Sasuke was the first one to give in, grabbing a pear from the pile and taking a huge bite. Sakura of course followed suit soon after. When they had polished off the food, Naruto couldn't help but smile. Wow, you two have next to no willpower. Sasuke immediately frowned. You didn't really eat breakfast, did you? I can't believe I fell for all your teamwork crap. Naruto immediately started laughing. Do you immediately turn everything into a shot against you? Do you really think I'm going to trick you two into something that could make us fail this test? We are a 3-man team, it's best that we work together. As usual, when Naruto teased him, Sasuke began looking for another accusation. Well, you said that you overslept because of training last night. We didn't do enough to make you that tired, especially with all the sleep you got in class. You worked without us and now you're lecturing us on teamwork. The boy simply could not take a joke. Every little thing was a transgression against him. Naruto sighed in irritation. For your information, I was being punished by my guardian for talking back. I had to do the dishes and then 100 punches and kicks. Only my friend Lee ever does that willingly. Sasuke's jaw dropped. Someone does that by choice? Naruto smirked. No, he usually does a lot more. Both of his friends' jaws dropped at the insanity of the taijutsu specialist. They spent so much time trying to imagine the sheer amount of work Lee put into his training that they didn't even notice Kakashi poof in with a lazy, yo. He was rather disappointed by the lack of response to his tardiness. Hey Naruto, what's wrong with your friends? Naruto smirked. I just told them about the cruel and unusual punishment that I was put through by a certain someone, who shall remain nameless. That of course led to Lee's training regiment and they've been shocked into silence ever since. Kakashi nodded in understanding. Say no more. All right you two, that's enough gawking over the workaholic that is Guy's clone. We have a genin exam to get to. He was pleased to see that both were looking at him attentively now. The idea of this test is to get one of these two bells before the timer goes off at noon. Sakura raised her hand, but there are 3 of us sensei. Kakashi's eye crinkled up in a smile. Nice of you to notice, Sakura. It is inevitable that one of you will fail. Not only will that one be tied to a log and forced to watch the rest of us eat lunch, but he or she will also be sent back to the academy. He was very pleased with the result of his little speech. Sakura looked frightened. Sasuke had a cold determination in his eyes, and Naruto looked both shocked and confused. Sasuke was the first to speak up. So that's why you didn't want us to eat breakfast. So that it would be harder for us to concentrate. Again Kakashi smiled. Exactly, it adds a little bit more flair when you are fighting for your stomach as well as your future. Sakura couldn't help but smile. So it's a good thing that Naruto didn't listen to you. Kakashi looked confused. Why is she smiling about that? I know Naruto didn't listen to me, but surely. What do you mean by that? Sasuke smirked openly. The beginning of the test and already they had one up on their sensei thanks to the supposed dobi of the class. She means that when Naruto decided not to listen to you he thought of us too. Had you been on time we wouldn't have had time to eat the fruit he brought us. Kakashi had never been so irritated with or proud of the blonde. You little brat, you have just made it onto my list. He only got what he knew was a cheeky grin from the kid. Naruto knew that Kakashi meant it as both a warning and a compliment. Alright you little brats, here's the deal. If you want one of these bells you better come at me with everything you've got. You have no chance at getting near me if you don't come at me with the intent to kill. I have absolutely no qualms sending all your little asses back to the academy. After all, I've done it many times before. He felt better now that he had gotten their attention and respect back. Even without lunch at stake they would still fight tooth and nail to stay out of the academy. Your test begins now. With that all 3 of them leapt off into the surrounding forest to hide. He couldn't help but notice the thoughtful expression on Naruto's face as he ran by. Looks like Naruto is going to be the wild card of this group. Sasuke's too arrogant to figure it out and as smart as Sakura as she will be thinking of herself. He has already looked underneath my tricks once today, he might be able to see under the rest. He rummaged in his pouch and pulled out one of his favorite books. Icha Icha Paradise. Naruto crouched near the tops of one of the trees. His mind was going haywire. What are you trying to get us to do, Kashi? Nothing is ever this simple with you. A genin could never get close enough to take something from you, yet you're pitting us against each other. He smiled in understanding. He had been with Kakashi long enough to understand the strange man's mind. He had also been fighting with him long enough to think of bringing some reassurance with him this morning. Kashi, you never should have taught me how to play shogi, it's the only thing I always beat you at. With that he went off to find Sasuke. Kakashi could feel Naruto moving towards Sasuke. All 3 had hidden themselves very well for genin, but none of them knew how to mask their chakra signatures. Naruto's was so large it was like a beacon calling out for attention, like the orange jumpsuit he used to wear. So he figured it out, huh? But he didn't choose to make a cage bunshin and contact both of his teammates at the same time. That one will cost him. A very discreet hand sign was made behind his book as he focused on Sakura's location. A genjutsu was cast around the young girl and she was forced to see her crush walking towards her bleeding from various kunai wounds. While Naruto was desperately trying to convince Sasuke that they all worked together, they heard a piercing scream. The boys both looked up in surprise. Kakashi was still standing in the middle of the clearing. Who would have thought she would have succumbed to such a weak genjutsu? Oh well, only 2 to go in 45 minutes. Looks like I'm sending 3 back to the academy again. Naruto clenched his fist. He had made a mistake. He had been so worried about keeping his intentions hidden that he had not chanced Kage Bunshin. Of course Kakashi would attack the one opening he left. Sasuke, you think you can distract him long enough for me to help Sakura? Of course I can, Dobi. I'm not the rookie of the year for nothing. But why should I help you? Sometimes Sasuke's arrogance made Naruto want to strangle him. Look, if you don't manage to get a bell on your own, I'll get Sakura to help me and give you my bell. Deal? Sasuke thought about it a moment. Either way he would win. Deal. Naruto nodded. Good, now get going Tem. As Sasuke charged in to attack, Naruto made a cage bunshin to cover his actions. Hopefully it would keep Kakashi's attention. He wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. He rushed in the direction he heard the scream from, occasionally glancing at the fight between Sasuke and Kakashi. His teammate was doing surprisingly well. His intercepting fist style was indeed strong. There was a flash of pink in the corner of his eye. Sakura was lying on the ground, unconscious. Naruto wasted no time in dispelling the genjutsu and reviving her. She shot up like a rocket. Sasuke-kun. She seemed confused as she looked into the sunglass-covered eyes of Naruto. Naruto, Sasuke is hurt, we have to help him. Naruto patted her on the back in an awkward attempt at calming her. It's okay Sakura-chan, it was just a genjutsu. See, he's fighting Kakashi-sensei right now. The pink-haired girl looked up just in time to see Sasuke blow a huge fireball at their teacher. She sighed in relief. Listen Sakura-chan, I need your help with something. When Kakashi defeats Sasuke, I need you to sneak behind him and try to take the bells while I distract him. Then give one of them to Sasuke. Sakura's eyes widened. He was letting Sasuke pass with his plan. What about you? Again she was surrounded by that warm feeling that signified one of his smiles. She never understood how he managed to do that. Don't worry about me. I made a deal with Sasuke so that he would distract Kakashi while I helped you. Everything will work out alright in the end. Sakura agreed, and not a minute too soon, because Kakashi had just dragged Sasuke underground so that only his head could be seen. As the Junin admired his handiwork, his two other students set their plan in action. Naruto jumped out of the bushes and stood before his teacher bold as brass. Ah Naruto, nice to see you at last. Did you like my present? Perhaps next time you will remember to take advantage of every skill you have. Why did you have to attack Sakura-chan? Wouldn't it have been better to go after me? After all, I'm the one who figured out the test. Kakashi smiled as he pulled out the book he had put away while fighting Sasuke. Think of it as revenge for ruining the first part of my test. Naruto smirked. As usual, you went for the first opening you saw. A big mistake this time around, as I'm the one who will defeat you. Kakashi flipped the page and continued reading. Naruto may be better at strategy games than him, but he had no chance in a real situation. What makes you so sure? You're still working out the bugs in your taijutsu style, and your strongest attack has no effect on me. You only have 10 minutes left, kid. From what I see, you are sunk. These books of yours really are very interesting, Kakashi-sensei. It would be a shame if something happened to one of them. This comment got Kakashi's attention. He looked up to see one of his precious Icha books in Naruto's hands. Wow, and this one is a limited edition signed by the author. Fear danced across the older ninja's visible eye. Hey, I never said you could use hostages. He could practically feel the evil grin on Naruto's face. You said to come at you with the intent to kill. But why kill when you can negotiate? Kakashi began to move towards his crafty little student. Why you little? Naruto opened the book and grabbed one of the pages. One more step and I'll rip it. He immediately froze in place. You wouldn't dare. Naruto pulled lightly. Do you really want to chance that? Kakashi was so preoccupied with the plight of his book that he didn't notice Sakura sneaking up behind him until too late. She grabbed the bells just as the timer went off. Kakashi turned to see her handing one of them to Sasuke, whom Naruto's clone had set free. I see, so you were never going to ask for the bells. You chose to sacrifice yourself for your teammates. But you do realize you just sent yourself back to the academy. Naruto walked over to his two friends, who were both looking at him with some regret. I realize that there is no such thing as a two-man team, and that I still have your most prized possession in my hand. Kakashi smiled at them, though his hand involuntarily twitched towards the holy grail of books in his student's grip. Follow me, you three. They arrived in front of the memorial stone. It stood in the clearing, large, black, and filled with the names of fallen heroes. Kakashi placed his hand on the marble slab. This stone is filled with the names of Konoha's greatest shinobi, all of whom were killed in action. The life of a ninja is short, and we must place our lives in the hands of our teammates. Naruto was right, there are no two-man teams. My test was to see if you could look beyond your own desires and work together. Someday you may be faced with a situation where it's either your life or your teammates. If and when that day comes, you would do well to remember that those who break the rules are trash, but those that abandon their friends are worse than trash. The 3 13-year-olds looked at the stone in awe. So many names marred its glassy surface. A ninja's life was short and it almost always ended here, on this stone. Naruto lifted his head high. Getting your name on that stone is the only way to go. Kakashi smiled. Naruto was the one to figure out the test and get you two to help him. Even if it took a little more persuasion than it should have, I am happy to say that because of him you three have become the first team I have ever passed. All three brightened considerably. Sakura smiled happily. So Naruto isn't going back to the academy? Kakashi smiled down at her. It was nice to see that she really did care about the well-being of his charge. No, he isn't. In fact, it is easy to say that out of you three he performed the best. Not only did he figure out the test, but he found out a non-confrontational way to settle the situation. Sakura beamed at the friend she had thought would be leaving. Sasuke was a bit perturbed that the Dobi had managed to do better than him, but happy he would be staying nonetheless. Speaking of non-confrontational, can I have my book back please? That effectively broke the moment. Sakura and Sasuke were shocked at how easily their sensei had been brought down. Naruto sighed and handed over the, for lack of a better word, book. Fine, I don't know how you stomach that garbage. Kakashi sniffed in indignation as he double-checked his precious book for damage. It's not garbage, it is a literary masterpiece that you are simply too young to appreciate. Naruto looked at him in irritation. Keep telling yourself that, perv. I'm going home to eat. I shouldn't take my mask off outside. As the other three watched him go, he got an evil idea. He was going to get Naruto back for endangering his porn. Come on you two, let's eat. As his students were busy eating their bento lunches, he wrote out something on 2 pieces of paper and grinned at his idea. Sure, it would mean that he couldn't be late tomorrow, but it would be worth it. Okay you two. Meet me at my place tomorrow at 8 AM for your first mission as Team 7. He handed them each a slip of paper. Here's my address, I'll tell Naruto later, and remember, don't be late. He ran off giggling evilly. Naruto would pay for his trick today. Oh yes he would. Naruto had woken up the next morning to the sun streaming through the glass ceiling. It was 7:30 again. As he did his stretches he couldn't help but wonder why he always woke up at 7:30. It was like he had some evil internal clock that had a 7:30 fetish. Kakashi hadn't talked to him at all after the test yesterday, still upset about the endangerment of his most prized possession. Naruto was just glad that he hadn't made him do the guy-inspired workout again. He pulled on some boxers and walked into the kitchen to find Kakashi nursing his usual cup of coffee. The man looked up and smiled at him. Good morning Naru. Ready for your first day as a real ninja? YouTube reference very much intended. Naruto smiled back. As ready as I'll ever be. It's nice to see you're not holding a grudge for yesterday anymore. Kakashi returned to his cup. He was indeed in a much better mood than last night. His revenge was close at hand and Naruto had decided to wear his favorite pair of boxers in, kill me, orange. He had trouble keeping his eye off the clock as 8 drew nearer, his prey oblivious as he ate breakfast. The doorbell rang. Only years of practice kept Kakashi from letting an evil cackle escape as he pulled up his mask. Iruka said he was going to drop by to see you before classes this morning. Can you go and let him in? The young boy downed the rest of his orange juice before getting up with a nod. He walked down the hall running his fingers through his already messy blonde tresses. Kakashi waited patiently as he heard the doorknob turn. Naruto stood in the doorway wearing nothing but his orange boxers in front of his 2 teammates. Sasuke looked genuinely confused while Sakura blushed terribly. The door slammed shut in their faces. Inside they could hear someone shouting out more curse words than either of them ever knew existed while another person giggled uncontrollably. Another door slammed shut inside. The front door opened yet again to reveal a still laughing Kakashi. Come on in you two. Naruto should be here in a few minutes. The two sat down at the kitchen table, Sasuke still confused and Sakura still embarrassed. Never before had she seen a boy in so little clothing and she couldn't help but let her thoughts freeze on that moment in time. He had been perfect, a child Adonis with messy hair yellow as the sun and eyes bluer than the sky. He had been muscular for his age and though he was short his skin was almost perfect, a nice even tan with not a scar or blemish in sight. The only mars to his complexion were the 6 whisker-like markings on his cheeks and even those seemed adorable. Sakura was shaken from her memory by the voice of her crush. Who the hell was the naked guy? Kakashi's chuckles came back full force. That was my housemate. I didn't tell him you were coming this morning, so I decided to play a trick on him. He's not much of a people person. What idiot answers the door in his underwear? I had told him it was someone he knew. Once you get under all his layers, he really knows no shame. Sasuke continued grumbling about the blonde's stupidity. Sakura was currently comparing her crush to the boy he was berating. Somehow his insults made her angry. She couldn't help but notice that the two boys were complete opposites. Sasuke's hair was dark and sleek and had a certain amount of style, whereas the mystery boy was blonder than Ino with a wild carefree look. Sasuke was pale and his eyes cold and dark. The other boy was tan with eyes that sparkled with life. If Sasuke was like the moon, that boy was the sun. It took a while for her to realize that her thoughts were not only repeating, but she was actually favoring a stranger over her crush. Before she could begin to berate herself, though, a knock sounded on the door and it opened. She turned to see Naruto popping his head into the house. Hey everybody, sorry I'm late. My guardian decided to play a nasty prank on me this morning. Kakashi smiled innocently. Oh, what kind of prank? Naruto's teammates had never seen the boy more irritable than he was right now. Let's just say he screwed with my morning routine and he should watch his back because I will get payback. Kakashi smiled at him. Now Naruto, revenge isn't a healthy thing. You don't want to end up emo like Sasuke. I'm not emo. Naruto rolled his eyes. You're emo, Sasuke, get over it. And as for you, Kakashi, if I'm not emo yet, there is nothing in this world that can bring me down. Believe it. Kakashi's eye widened in shock. He pointed at Naruto in accusation. Don't you dare say that ever again. You know I hate that. It reminds me of Guy. Naruto began to laugh. Ha 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 ha. I don't care how much you hate it, Kakashi. Believe it. Kakashi cringed. Stop it. Believe it, believe it. Ha 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 ha. Naruto began to run around the room as Kakashi gave chase. Shut up, you little brat. He almost snatched the boy, but he leapt into the air, flipped and kicked off the ceiling to get behind him, running out the door laughing hysterically. Nice try, Kakashi-sensei. See you at Hokage Gigi's office. With that said, he ran off into the distance. Kakashi screamed out the open door at the top of his lungs. If you start wearing green spandex, I refuse to teach you anything. They could still hear the boy's laughter fading off into the distance. Kakashi sighed in defeat and turned towards his two other students, both of whom looked shocked and confused. Well, if there is one thing he gained from all those pranks he pulled, it was how to run away. The only way we'll find the little runt is if we go to the Hokage's office. Both nodded, still rather dumbfounded by the absurdity of the fight. They had been walking down the road for about a minute when something dawned on Sakura. Kakashi-sensei. Why did Naruto call the Hokage old man? Kakashi glanced back at the pink-haired girl. After all that, the only thing she's wondering about is Naruto's gift for names? He sighed at how oblivious Genin could be. The Hokage has always taken care of Naruto, and so he is now seen as a grandfather figure. Couple that with Naruto's bad manners and lack of respect and you have Hokage Gigi. Sasuke scowled. And the Hokage actually lets him get away with it? Kakashi grinned. Naruto is difficult to hate once you get to know him, and Sandaime knows that being called Gigi is probably the most respect the boy would ever give anyone. He doesn't have any family, so to be considered part of the one he created for himself is the highest honor he could give someone. Plus the Hokage is rather old. Sasuke and Sakura face faulted. Yet again he had ruined a very good speech. He seemed incapable of being serious for long periods of time. They arrived at the Hokage's office to see Naruto sitting on the old man's desk as they both laughed. The old man looked up when they entered the room. Ah, Kakashi, nice to see you. Naruto just finished telling me about what happened at your house this morning. I never knew that guys scared you that much. Kakashi looked towards the corner of the room, keeping his composure. I don't know what you're talking about. Naruto turned his head towards the scarecrow, evil intent leaking off of him. There's that hip attitude again. Kakashi's cool attitude faltered at the sound of his adopted son's voice. He couldn't help the shiver that ran up his spine. Don't do that. It's creepy as hell, you little jackass. Naruto and the Hokage began laughing again at the copy ninja's expense. Kakashi pouted at the two. That's it, Naruto, I forbid you from seeing Guy ever again. Please, you know he's your best friend. After all, you two are eternal rivals. Again the Junin pouted. Hokage-sama, he's making fun of me. The Hokage was laughing so hard that tears were leaking from his eyes. Oh, stop it, you two. I can't breath. The old man gasped for air. I love it when you two come to visit, it always brightens my day. Haha, so I take it that you four are here for your first mission? Kakashi went back into a relaxed pose as Naruto hopped off the desk and took his place next to his teammates. Yep, my first ever Genin team is ready for a mind-numbing stream of D-rank missions. The three behind him visibly slumped as the older men grinned. I would love to see how Naruto handles something he can't just skip out on. A scroll passed hands and Kakashi turned to his team. Let's get started on the mission. They spent the rest of the day pulling weeds, walking dogs and going shopping for little old ladies. They all went home tired and irritable only to meet up at the training ground the next morning, wait 2 hours for their sensei and start again. By the end of the month they had weeded 6 gardens, painted 2 houses and 4 fences, babysat 14 kids, walked 20 dogs, went shopping 12 times and chased down the daimyo's wife's cat more than any of them cared to remember. As they stood before the Hokage, covered in scratches watching the animal all of them wanted desperately to kill, being hugged into submission by its owner. They all felt a certain amount of sick pleasure at its torment. After all, it served the creature right. At first they had all felt sorry for the cat, but after what it put them through it deserved its punishment. The Sandaime was flipping through his papers to find a suitable torture session for one of his favorite teams. Okay, there is a woman who needs you to plant some flowers for her. No. Everyone looked at Naruto, who was visibly shaking with anger. I'm so sick of these missions, and if I have to buy one more set of clothes because that cat puts holes in them, I'm going to kill it. Sakura sighed, her teammate had finally snapped. I agree with Naruto. I've had enough of these errands. She looked at Sasuke in shock. He had never spoken out to an authority figure before. Sarutobi smirked as Iruka, who had been helping him today, yelled at them for their lack of respect. I was wondering when you would crack. I must say you lasted much longer than I would have expected, Naruto. Do you agree with these two, Sakura? Sakura looked at the boys, then at that damned cat. Her mind was made up when the scratch on her arm gave a particularly strong twinge. Yes, I'm tired of these D-rank missions too. Before Iruka could start yelling again, the old Hokage held up a scroll. Well, I do have 1 C rank to give you. The three immediately brightened. Kakashi sighed in relief. He didn't think he could take 1 more D rank and stay sane. On top of that, Naruto had been particularly malicious with his guy imitations ever since the boxer incident. Perhaps he would calm down if he got out of the village. The Hokage gestured to Iruka to let a man in, effectively cutting off his protests. A man only slightly younger than Sarutobi came in. He was obviously inebriated. Team 7, meet the subject of your mission, Tazuna. You are to make sure he makes it home and completes the bridge he's building in safety. Tazuna took a swig of the sake he was carrying. So these are the bodyguards the great Konoha has to offer. They're nothing but brats, and that little one in all the clothes looks like nothing but a depressed 10-year-old. Naruto growled in irritation while Sasuke chuckled at his teammate. For once he wasn't the one being pointed out as emo. I do not look like I'm 10. I may be short, but there is no way I look that young, you old drunkard. The man glared at him. Why, you little punk? Didn't your mother teach you to respect your elders? Naruto matched the glare from behind his sunglasses. Respect is earned, not given, and as far as I can see you hardly deserve it. Kakashi put a hand on the angry boy's shoulder to keep him from doing anything rash, for Naruto. I assure you, Tazuna-san, these three are full-fledged ninja. They should have no problem guarding you, and if anything happens I'll be there too. Also, please don't insult Naruto's size. The lack of growth is a very touchy subject for him. Naruto grumbled in irritation. It's not like I can help being short. Sasuke smirked. Stop being emo, Naruto. Naruto turned to the boy slowly. The only reason he pointed me out as the depressed one is because I wear all black while you wear those goofy little white shorts. Sasuke's eye twitched. My shorts are not goofy, and at least I don't cover up like a mummy, you skin-diseased loser. A pair of leather-clad hands found themselves wrapped around the dark-haired boy's throat. Kakashi immediately ran to pry his students apart before one of them was throttled. Naruto was doing his best to stay put while searing the air with curses. Sasuke was desperately gasping for air and Sakura was screaming at the top of her lungs. Tazuna was laughing hysterically at the mayhem he provoked, and Sarutobi was left shaking his head at how unprofessional his ninja were acting. That night poor Naruto was put through another guy-inspired workout for attempting to kill a teammate. He had tried to tell Kakashi that Sasuke was never in any danger. He had only wanted to make the boy black out, but his guardian would have none of it. And so that evening found him busy doing squats, push-ups and sit-ups in sets of 103 times each. He retaliated by screaming about the power of youth the whole time. Kakashi and Naruto both arrived on time the next morning. Sakura and Sasuke were both shocked to see their teammate and sensei arrive on time. The only thing they had to wait for now was their client. Naruto gave a snort of laughter. I told you that old drunk wouldn't be here on time. Kakashi's shoulders slumped as he grudgingly put some money in the boy's outstretched hand. Why'd I even bother? Naruto placed the money in his pocket. Because you're convinced that one day you're going to win. It's always nice doing business with you, sucker. He looked at his other two very confused students. Never bet against Naruto in anything. The Gaki always wins, no matter what. Wanna bet? Of course, you're going down this time, kid. Naruto sighed and shook his head. You do realize that if I go down I win, right? I was just joking about that one. Kakashi smacked himself in the forehead. How do you make me walk into those traps? I don't do anything. You are just addicted to gambling. I am not addicted to gambling. I'm addicted to winning. That is not youthful, Kakashi. The silver-haired man cringed visibly. I told you not to do that guy imitation anymore. Naruto snickered lightly as he pointed behind his mentor. I think you should look behind you, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi turned hesitantly. There in a tree stood the infamous Guy-sensei in his even more infamous green unitard. So it's true. Your first team ever is off on its first C-rank mission. Haha, I never thought I'd see the day. Kakashi shrugged. Whatever. Fire seemed to burn in Guy's eyes as he leapt down from his perch. There's that hip attitude again. I'd expect nothing less from my eternal rival. Kakashi's one visible eye rolled. Yeah, eternal rival, I get it already. Why are you here? I wanted to see your team off on their first big mission, of course. I remember my team's first big mission. So they gave you the Uchiha prodigy, did they? Well, I doubt he'll be any match for Neji. Kakashi yawned. I think that depends on him, doesn't it, Guy? The only genin that will defeat Neji is my Lee. He has been working very hard and I have faith that he will succeed. I bet Sasuke could beat him. After all, Neji has an even bigger stick shoved up his ass. Guy looked towards the boy surrounded in black cloth. Naruto saying such things is unyouthful. You should come training with Lee again. His youth will be a good influence on you. Naruto laughed nervously, a large sweat drop forming on his head. I'll think about it. He usually leaves me with a few too many bruises. Nonsense, those bruises are merely a testament to your youthful hard work. At this point old man Tazuna decided to show up. The drunk looked Guy over critically. Please don't tell me this freak is coming along too. Kakashi was left to answer the bridge builder's question as Guy was sulking and his team was trying to keep their laughter under control. No, he is not, Tazuna-san. Guy has his own team to worry about. Now that you are finally here, shall we head out? Tazuna sighed. Yes, we should. You lazy bums are wasting daylight. Kakashi placed his hand on top of Naruto's head to keep the young hothead from jumping their client. Of course, Tazuna-san. As they went through the gates exiting the village, Kakashi smiled down at Naruto. What a nice surprise. Guy showing up like that. Wasn't it, Naruto? Naruto looked away from his sensei. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sasuke's eye twitched in irritation. Why were Naruto and Kakashi so buddy-buddy all the time? Did you two know each other before the teams were assigned? Naruto froze. Why do you ask that? Sasuke shrugged. You two are just so familiar with each other. I mean, you make bets, you joke around, you even know how to drive each other crazy. Kakashi smiled. One of his students finally noticed, and here he thought they were unobservant. Good job, Sasuke, it only took you a month to figure it out. Naruto and I have known each other for the past 3 years. I was the one assigned to train him after he contracted his skin disease and had to be taken out of school. Sakura's eyes widened. So you have been training him for 3 years? But academy students aren't supposed to be trained by Junin. The Hokage made an exception for me because I was supposed to take the graduation exams the year I contracted my disease. You two never met me before this year because I was 3 years ahead of you. This made Sasuke angry. You're the same age as us, how come you were 3 years ahead? Kakashi decided to save his student at this point. Naruto was an orphan living on the streets. The Hokage put him in the academy at a young age so that he could learn to defend himself and keep him out of trouble. Why wasn't he in an orphanage? Kakashi turned toward the pink-haired girl who was finally proving why she was considered smartest in her class. After the Kyuubi attacked, there were just too many orphans. They would be taken care of as best as possible, but some, like Naruto, just ended up getting overlooked. Sakura looked shocked at the shot of reality. So you lived on the streets? Naruto nodded, his eyes on the ground. At least Kakashi had sugar-coated the truth. From 3 until 4, then the Sandame found me. He gave me an apartment and put me in the academy when I was 6. The group continued walking in silence for some time. Tazuna was surprised to find out that a young boy had managed to live through such a horrible situation and survive. Sasuke was digesting the idea that some people did in fact have lives as bad as his. Sakura was shocked by her little glimpse into the life of her mysterious teammate in the real world. Naruto was just glad that the full truth had not been revealed. Kakashi just read his book. It wasn't until they came upon a puddle on the side of the road that things changed. Kakashi's eye rolled to look at the rather obvious genjutsu, then continued as if he hadn't noticed it. He heard the splash as Naruto decided to jump in it and chuckled. Perhaps the Chunin would learn from the headaches they received. The chains that wrapped around him belonged to none other than the Demon Brothers. The Junin feigned surprise as he was ripped to shreds before the eyes of his team. Sakura screamed as she saw her sensei die, but Sasuke acted immediately. He threw a kunai, pinning their chain to a tree. The Chunin simply abandoned their weapon, one going after Sasuke, the other attacking Naruto. Naruto only had a second to glance at Sasuke's fight before dodging the vicious claws on his attacker's hand. You little brat, I'll kill you for jumping on my head like that. Naruto continued ducking around his opponent's claws. Well, if you didn't want me to jump on you, then you shouldn't have disguised yourself as a puddle when it hasn't rained in weeks. With that said, he blocked the Chunin's claws with the metal plate of his glove and slid inside his guard, delivering a powerful strike to the neck. The move would have been perfect if the demon brother had not managed to free his claws and attack his unprotected back before slipping into unconsciousness. Kakashi walked back onto the path, clapping as Sasuke felled his opponent. Sakura sighed in relief at the sight of their sensei alive and kicking. Good job, boys, now we know who those two were after. You have some explaining to do, Tazuna. The old man was about to respond when Naruto fell to his knees, gasping in pain. Sakura ran toward the boy, hand reaching for the angry red gashes on his back. Kakashi's eye widened in shock as he raced toward the unsuspecting girl. He wrenched her hand away from the injured boy right before her fingers made contact. Don't touch him. Sakura stood holding the offending hand in confusion as her teacher crouched over his injured student. She glanced over at Sasuke, who just shrugged, as confused as she was. How you doing, Naruto? You okay? The boy groaned and gasped. It hurts. Alright kid, just lie down and I'll take a look at you. Kakashi took a kunai to the back of Naruto's black shirt, revealing the tanned skin and bleeding gashes. He sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked accusingly at the bridge builder. Do you see what you have done? You lied about the danger of a mission, and now my student is dying from poison. Needless to say, the other three were shocked. Dying? Can't we take him back to Konoha for treatment? The Junin looked at Sakura. Doctors can't touch him. Naruto's skin disease is actually a bloodline of sorts called Kagayaku, causing pain. Thanks Bojangles, but he can't control it. I'm the only person alive who can touch Naruto without feeling the effects. I've never heard of a bloodline by that name. You wouldn't have Sasuke. Naruto is the first person to ever have it. Now would you care to explain yourself, Tazuna? The old man looked thoroughly ashamed of himself. My land is very poor. A few years ago the shipping tycoon Gatu arrived and took control of all trade. He bleeds our money dry and attacks innocent people with his hired thugs. By building my bridge I am creating another means of trade which will break Gatu's hold over us. I never wanted anything like this to happen, but we could not afford a higher rank mission. I'll understand if you leave me. I just hope you can find some way to save the boy. Kakashi sighed and looked at the boy on the ground. What do you think, Naruto? Naruto slowly reached up and removed his glasses, revealing the sparkling blue eyes underneath. I think you should bleed me out so that we can continue our mission. Kakashi nodded grimly. Sakura, Sasuke, tie up those chunin and set up camp. We will escort Tazuna home tomorrow. As the two began their assignments, Kakashi gently removed the ruined shirt from his student. Naruto was glad that he had switched to a mask that covered his face and head as his old hood kept flying off in training. At least he maintained some of his dignity. Kakashi sighed as he raised a kunai over his student's torn back. Are you ready, Naruto? The boy squeezed his blue eyes closed, clamped his mouth shut and nodded. A sharp cry of agony turned the attention of the other three to the makeshift operation table. They were horrified to see Kakashi cutting into the already deep wounds on Naruto's back, the boy fighting with every ounce of willpower to stay still. Blood covered Kakashi's hands as it flowed from Naruto's back. What are you doing? He'll die. The kunai gouged into another large cut and Naruto screamed again. If I don't bleed out the poison, he will. Sakura. Don't worry, if anyone can survive this, it's him. The kunai ripped into the third cut and Naruto buried his face in the ground to muffle another shout. Stop staring at me and get a fire going. I'm going to need some hot water and bandages when I'm done. By the time Kakashi was finished, Naruto had passed out from the pain. The one-eyed man bandaged up the wounds in silence, smiling as he watched them heal. The poison was gone. The Kyuubi would not close the skin if any toxins remained. Sleep well, Naruto, you deserve it. The others looked at the young man in horror. Naruto had been awake through most of the torture, and though he had screamed, he had not moved. None of them could imagine how much willpower that must have taken. Something was bothering Sasuke. Kakashi-sensei, how is it that Naruto is the first person to ever have the Kagayaku? Bloodlines are inherited traits. We don't know much about bloodlines, Sasuke, but they all have to start somewhere. Although, the way things are looking for Naruto, this one will never be passed on. What exactly does the Kagayaku bloodline do? The pink-haired girl was looking at the peacefully sleeping boy intently. The Kagayaku is a truly terrifying bloodline, both for the affected and the user. Ever since his 10th birthday, anyone who has touched Naruto has been forced to go through every bad experience of his life, and he has had more emotional and physical trauma in his short life than anyone should have to deal with. He's been through so much, in fact, that the first person ever affected by his ability went into a sort of coma. Sakura gasped. What had Naruto been through that was so awful? She glanced at his closed lids that were hiding those beautiful blue eyes. They were so kind and warm, and familiar. She had seen them somewhere before. How is it that you are able to touch him, Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi sighed at the memories. I was the one put in charge of him after the incident. I helped him get the clothes he wears so that he could be around people without worrying about hurting them. It was only natural that I learn what I was dealing with, so I made him let me touch him. It was the worst moment of my life, and it wasn't even mine. After I got through it all without having a meltdown, there was nothing else it could do to me, and I've been able to touch him ever since. So it is possible for people to touch him. He won't necessarily be alone his entire life. Kakashi sighed at Sakura's naivete and placed his hand on his sleeping student's head. It may be true that there is a way around his bloodline, Sakura, but few would be able to pay the price. Naruto would never willingly put an innocent person through that torture. He can barely put someone he hates through it. I had to force him to hold my hand that day. Sasuke looked at the only person he could consider a friend, then at his sensei. Do you ever regret it? Kakashi gave Sasuke one of his signature eye smiles. Not once in the 3 years I have taught him. Naruto is quite possibly the most remarkable individuals I have ever had the pleasure of knowing. I have yet to meet anyone with more strength of character than him. Now I think it is time for sleep. I'll take first watch, Sakura second and Sasuke third. Each person was in their own little world that night. Sakura was trying to imagine what Naruto's life must have been like. Tazuna was thinking about his grandson's reaction to this boy who seemed to have nothing. Sasuke was wondering if he could stand up to the test of Naruto's Kagayaku. Kakashi was hoping that the blonde would forgive him for telling them so much. The night wore on. Kakashi dealt with the demon brothers when he was sure everyone was asleep. There was no reason to expose the young ninja to the harsh realities of ninja life just yet. Not when they had just learned of the hell that was Uzumaki Naruto's life. Sunlight streamed through the trees and hit Naruto's face, but that wasn't what was bothering him. His mattress seemed much harder than usual and he felt suffocated by the mask that still clung to his face. The fact that his gloves, pants and shoes remained also irritated him. How could he have fallen asleep without removing all of his clothes? He grudgingly opened his heavy eyelids, feeling much more drained than usual. Had he forgotten about some evil training session Kakashi put him through? There was a lot greener than he was used to, and his team was sitting around a fire eating breakfast with some old man. Suddenly he bolted upright, making Sakura scream in shock. What were all these people doing in his room? His back seared with pain, protesting the quick movement. With the pain came his memory. The mission, the attack, the poison, the revelation of one of his deepest secrets. His heart plummeted at that memory. Kakashi would have had to explain some things after he passed out. There was no way that both Sasuke and Sakura had taken the knowledge of his bloodline without asking some questions. Now he would receive nothing but pity from his two teammates, and he had no idea how much Kakashi had deemed necessary to tell them. "Welcome back to the world, Naruto. Would you like some breakfast?" The boy nodded, eyes downcast, and took the plate Kakashi had shoved under his nose. He refused to look at the others. He feared what he would see in their eyes. "Where is my bag? I need a new shirt." "Not yet, kid. We need to change those bandages first." Naruto sighed and his shoulders slumped. He felt exposed and vulnerable without his shirt on, as if one of them was going to jump on him and riffle through all of his worst memories. "Can you at least give me my sunglasses? I feel a bit more secure with them on." Kakashi's visible eyes softened as he pressed the dark lenses into Naruto's hand. They were quickly put in place, hiding the now slightly dulled blue eyes. Kakashi knew that look. Naruto couldn't hide anything with those eyes of his. That was how he looked when Kakashi found him after that fateful October night. You knew that they would have to be told eventually. At least they found out before someone slipped up and got hurt. "I know, Kashi. I was just hoping that we could put it off a little longer." It was nice to be thought of as normal for a change. Kakashi began undoing the knots in Naruto's bandages. "I know, Naruto. But you have never been normal, you have always been extraordinary." It was only a matter of time before it slipped out. Being extraordinary is overrated. With that, Naruto shoved food into his mouth so quickly that no one had time to look at him without his mask. A trick he had learned from Kakashi. The others sat quietly watching the exchange. It was odd to see the ever-confident and energetic Naruto so broken, and they all felt out of place during the rather intimate moment. Sakura felt humbled seeing the vulnerable side of one of her best friends. Naruto had always seemed untouchable to her, never letting anything bring him down. Now she knew that he really was. She tried to imagine what it would be like never being able to feel another person's skin against yours. Living in constant fear that you might accidentally hurt someone. Knowing that every time you used your power you allowed someone to see the most painful moments that you tried to hide. The last seemed like the worst to her. Allowing someone to see into the worst parts of your life was a terrible price to pay, even for such a crippling attack. She watched the bloody bandages fall to the ground, revealing a tanned upper body toned by hours of hard work. The cuts on his back didn't look so serious now. In fact, they looked like they had been healing for a week. They were much smaller than yesterday and they were barely bleeding from his quick movements earlier. Kakashi simply cleaned them off and began wrapping them in new bandages. Her eyes followed the white gauze slowly hiding his torso from view. Were it not for the injury to his back, his skin would be flawless. No one had such perfect features except. The revelation hit Sakura like a ton of bricks. The boy from Kakashi's house. Now that she thought about it, it was painfully obvious. Of course Naruto would live with Kakashi, after all the Junin was the only one who could touch him. That was why they knew each other so well. That was how Naruto had gotten his hands on one of Kakashi's perverted books and thought to bring it to the test. And Kakashi must have tricked him into answering the door that morning as revenge for the hostage situation. Her eyes were wide in shock as she watched Kakashi help Naruto into a long-sleeved black shirt. Naruto was the boy that had invaded her dreams ever since he opened the door. Naruto was the Adonis who shined brighter than the sun itself. She should have realized it the second she saw those eyes. There was no way that two people could possess eyes so pure blue. A fangirl's squeal was threatening to break free, but she kept her silence. A part of her was tempted to tell Sasuke of her revelation, but she quickly thought better of it. Naruto obviously didn't want anybody to know, and he had already revealed one of his secrets. Who was she to reveal another? No, she would keep this one to herself for now. Let Sasuke figure it out on his own. Alright Naruto, you're all done. Do you think you can walk, or are you going to need help? I can walk on my own, Kakashi. Naruto stood up defiantly, only for his legs to wobble and make him collapse. That's what I thought. You lost too much blood last night. Even you need some time to regain your strength. With that said, Kakashi picked Naruto up piggyback style. A growl of irritation escaped Naruto's lips. What am I, 5? Kakashi grinned. Does little Naru-chan need a timeout? Sasuke let out a snort of laughter at Naruto's new nickname. He had been trying to be as unobtrusive as possible, but he couldn't fight back the laughter. This did nothing to improve Naruto's quickly deteriorating mood. He knew that Sasuke would bring that name back to haunt him in the future. Shut up, you emo ass, I'm injured. One of Sasuke's signature smirks spread across his face. So sorry to offend, Naru-chan. Sakura bopped the dark-haired boy on the head. Don't make fun of Naruto. This action shocked both the boys and Kakashi, as it was very uncharacteristic Sakura. She never yelled at Sasuke for anything. To her, he could do no wrong. After the initial shock wore off, Naruto understood what was going on. Sakura, I don't want your pity. Just because you know about my condition now doesn't change anything. Sakura felt rather insulted. How could you think that about me? You are one of the bravest people I know. I hit Sasuke because we both saw what happened to you last night. It's a miracle that you're alive after losing so much blood. Kakashi was surprised, to say the least. The little fangirl had heard of the Kagayaku and stepped up beautifully. Naruto had been right again. A warm feeling enveloped Sakura. The kind that let her know Naruto was smiling, but this one was different. This smile was just for her. Thank you, Sakura. You will never know how much you saying that means to me. Sakura could feel another fangirl squeal coming on but suppressed it. Naruto was her friend, not her crush. She had been pursuing Sasuke for so long that it felt weird to think of Naruto that way. Never mind that images of him answering the door in nothing but a pair of orange boxers were swiftly replacing those of Sasuke in her dreams. No, what she felt for Naruto was different. He was a best friend that happened to look good. These thoughts rushed through Sakura's mind repeatedly as they continued the journey to Wave. She didn't come out of her stupor until Tazuna pointed out his masterpiece as they got onto the small boat ferrying them across the water. It was huge, a testament to the bridge builder's skill. And here she had been thinking that he was just an old lush. Wow, that's incredible, G-san. Thanks a lot, Squirt, and stop calling me G-san, I'm not that old. Do you have any grandkids? Yes. Then you're that old. Tazuna probably would have smacked Naruto upside the head if not for the intervention of the boatman. Will you two be quiet, or do you want to be attacked? Tazuna smiled sheepishly. Naruto had a gift for making him forget the danger he was in. Unfortunately, that gift involved annoying him to death. Sorry. By this point the other three ninja were trying desperately to stifle their laughter. If they hadn't seen it happen with their own eyes, they never would have guessed that Naruto was the one who got injured yesterday. They made it to land without any more problems as Naruto had actually kept his mouth shut. Tazuna thanked the boatman for the risk he had taken. Everyone was on edge as they walked through the forest. Their first encounter had been Chunin, and all of them knew what was coming next. Junin. A bush on the right shook ever so slightly and, in a moment of panic, Sakura threw a kunai at it. A white rabbit trembled in fear of the knife that had come so close to ending its life. Sakura, of course, immediately felt guilty for traumatizing the poor white rabbit. Kakashi glanced over at the girl cuddling the rabbit as he adjusted Naruto on his back. Something was wrong with this picture. How did a white rabbit blend into a forest without snow? Then it dawned on him, someone had used a kawarami. Everybody get down. He pulled the injured boy off his back and lay them both down on the forest floor as his other students grabbed Tazuna. Kakashi had reacted just in time, as a large sword whizzed overhead seconds after he gave the order. They all looked up at the dangerous weapon sticking out of a tree only to see a tall, muscular man balanced on its handle. The copycat ninja Hitaki Kakashi. No wonder the demon brothers never came back. Who would have thought one of Konoha's most powerful ninja would be here, with a bunch of brats no less. Naruto let out a growl as he pushed himself off the ground. Calm yourself, Naruto, that is Momochi Zabuza, demon of the bloody mist. You wouldn't last 10 seconds against this guy, and he won't go easy on you just because you're a kid. The man let out a sinister chuckle. How flattering. It seems I am in your bingo book too. I need you three to cover Tazuna. I'll take care of Zabuza. Naruto's eyes widened as Kakashi lifted his Hite-8 revealing his other eye. He jumped back to his teammates and the old man drawing a kunai. If Kakashi was resorting to that before the fight began, then this guy was tough. Zabuza laughed hollowly as he jumped from his perch, wrenching his sword from the tree bark on the way down. The Sharingan revealed so soon, I'm flattered. A thick mist began to creep through the air, obscuring everything. It was stifling and the killing intent laced through it made it difficult for the genin to breathe. Even Tazuna was feeling its effects. The chilling voice of Zabuza cut through the silence like a knife as he listed off all the body's vital points. Naruto's legs shook slightly under his weight, still not fully recovered from blood loss. Sakura was trembling like a leaf, but the hand holding her kunai remained steady. Sasuke seemed to be taking it the worst. He raised his kunai to his heart, anything to free him from this awful tension that reminded him so much of that night. Sasuke. He froze, captivated by the calm face of his sensei, which he could hardly see. I will not allow any of my teammates to die. Too late. Zabuza had somehow managed to slip in between their defenses. Before he could make a move, however, Kakashi lodged a kunai into his liver. Water spilled from the mortal wound and the man dispersed, revealing the real Zabuza who cut their sensei in half. Everyone's eyes widened as water splashed onto their faces instead of blood. Even in the mist, Kakashi had managed to copy the Mizu Bunshin. The real Kakashi's head slipped out of the water he had been hiding in. This had unfortunately turned out to be a mistake as Zabuza trapped him in a sphere of water. The genin, seeing their sensei's plight, prepared to charge the man whose right arm was occupied. Before they made it halfway there, Zabuza made a one-handed seal, blocking them with a water clone. The clone grabbed Naruto by the arm and twisted it behind the boy's back, making him drop his kunai as pain screamed through him. The other two stopped in shock as they watched their teammate sink down to his knees, pain radiating from his injured back. Looks like this one didn't get away from my subordinates unscathed. The clone placed its foot on Naruto's back and applied pressure, receiving a grunt of discomfort. I'm surprised he's not dead already. More pressure, another grunt. He has a high tolerance for pain, Kakashi. You should be proud of this one. Kakashi could only watch in horror as his son was tortured before his eyes, and this time he couldn't do a thing to stop it. How much does this one mean to you, Kakashi? The clone placed Naruto's dropped kunai against his neck. I guess a lot by the tears in your eyes. He'll just have to be the first to go. The clone made to slice at the boy's neck with the dangerous blade, but Naruto chose that instant to act. He blocked the knife with the armor on his free hand. Then, dislocating his shoulder, he rolled to the side, freeing his back and wrenching his wrist from the Bunshin's grasp. He rolled several times to avoid the Bunshin's grasp, the dust he stirred up causing confusion. When he stopped, he tossed a kunai at Sasuke. The boy grabbed it out of the air, dropping his own in the process. What did you do that for, Dobi? You could have killed me. Shut up and throw it, Tem. Naruto's right arm hung limply at his side and his glasses were askew, revealing his blue eyes. One glance was all Sasuke needed to understand his friend's plan. He threw the kunai at Zabuza's real body, putting his target practice to good use. The Junin snatched the instrument of death out of the air as if it was a toy. He laughed at the pathetic attempts of children. Smart move aiming for my real body, but did you really think you could hit me with one kunai? Sasuke smirked. As a matter of fact, I didn't. Smoke surrounded the weapon, revealing a rather beat-up Naruto hanging by the dislocated arm in Zabuza's hand, a glove clamped between his teeth. Let's see how you like it, asshole. Naruto placed his bare hand on Zabuza's exposed torso. Zabuza saw himself being held down by his clone, the large foot digging into the angry gashes on his back. Felt the shoulder rip out of its socket as he forced an escape. Felt the kunai ripping into the already mortal wounds to release enough blood and poison to kill a man twice. He screamed in shock, wrenching himself away from the torture chamber in a child's body. In his effort to get away from Naruto, his hands slipped out of Kakashi's water prison, freeing the copycat. Naruto fell into the water and began the difficult task of swimming to shore with only one arm. What the hell kind of technique was that? It was like I was the kid. Kakashi stood in front of the demon, an unseen smirk on his face. Naruto's skills are the least of your worries right now, Zabuza. Besides, didn't anyone ever tell you not to dish out what you can't take? The angry Zabuza charged at the copy Nin Zanbato raised. His strike was immediately blocked by a kunai. The two men faced off, challenging each other's strength only to come to a stalemate. Zabuza pushed away from his adversary and began to form a long string of rapid hand seals only to see Kakashi mirroring his every move. At the exact same time, two water dragons rose and began to do battle overhead, inevitably destroying each other. Zabuza was shocked. That was no mere copy. Kakashi had finished at exactly the same time and with the same amount of power. He was more hesitant this time, watching Kakashi's hands perform his exact movements as he prepared his strongest attack. His eyes widened in shock as he saw a ghost of himself over the man's shoulder. He hesitated. That was all the time Kakashi needed. He completed the last hand seal and shouted out the attack. Zabuza found himself hit by a swirling tunnel of raging water. He slammed into a tree, slumping onto the ground in an unceremonious heap. That jutsu hadn't been copied. Kakashi knew what he was going to do before he did it. Do you begin to understand now, Zabuza? I can see the future, and you're not in it. Just as Kakashi was going to finish the job, two senbon needles pierced the sensitive skin of Zabuza's neck. Kakashi checked the man's pulse, confirming his death. Thank you for wearing him down. I've been after him for some time now. A young boy wearing a white mask leapt from the trees. Your assistance in the retrieval of Momochi Zabuza will be included in my report. Now if you'll excuse me, I'll take care of the body. With that, the boy lifted Zabuza's body and disappeared. Kakashi-sensei, who was that boy? That was a hunter nin of Kirigakure Sakura. The pink-haired girl nodded her head as she remembered the lesson on hunter nin from the academy. That is so unfair. That guy couldn't have been older than us, and yet he's already an elite? The small outburst brought everyone's attention to the very unhappy Naruto. There was no doubt that the cuts on his back had been opened again. His right shoulder was still dislocated, rendering the arm useless. He was also sopping wet, having spent the entirety of the battle trying to keep his head above water while getting battered about by the attacks. He was lucky to still be conscious. Naruto, you have to remember that no matter how strong you get, there is always someone stronger. The boy rolled his now visible eyes, his glasses having been lost in the water. Just because I know it doesn't mean I have to accept it. Kakashi smiled. I suppose that's true. Now we better get going. Kakashi had only managed to take a couple steps before he froze, eyes widening. He collapsed. Kakashi-sensei. Naruto began the arduous task of getting on his feet. Don't worry, Sakura-chan. He just overused the Sharingan. It takes a lot of chakra to use for extended periods of time. Sasuke will have to carry him to Tazuna's place and he'll be back to normal in about a week. Why do I have to be the one to carry him? Naruto had finally succeeded in standing up and his legs buckled, making him fight for balance. You have to carry him because Sakura isn't strong enough to carry a full-grown man, and I can barely stand, let alone walk. Unless you think we should make our client carry him, because that's so professional. Sasuke sighed as he dragged Kakashi onto his back. Man, he's heavy. How far away is your house? Tazuna looked on the miniature ninjas with a newfound respect. Not far, it should only take about half an hour. Sasuke groaned as he readjusted the tall man. I was afraid of that. When they reached the house, both Sasuke and Naruto were about ready to collapse. A woman ran out of the house and hugged Tazuna. Thank God you're safe. The old man smiled and hugged her back. Tsunami, I'd like to meet the ninja that got me home safely. She finally noticed the four ragged ninja standing behind her father. Oh Kami, they're just children. Her eyes fell on the unconscious Kakashi. Dad put him in a spare room for me. He needs medical attention. Tazuna relieved Sasuke of his burden and began dragging the man into the house while his daughter hovered around the teens. The little one can barely stand. Naruto's eye twitched at the reference to his height. I'm fine, just take care of Kakashi. But, don't worry ma'am, we'll take care of him. Just please help Kakashi-sensei. The woman nodded to Sakura and followed her father into the house. The ninja walked in behind her. Naruto collapsed onto the floor almost as soon as they got inside. Sasuke followed soon after. Sakura looked at the two boys stretched out on the floor and shook her head. Naruto, give me your gloves. Blue eyes snapped open and locked on her. Why? Sakura sighed. He was so defensive sometimes. Because I need to check your injuries, and if you don't want me to touch you, I'm going to need something on my hands. Naruto seemed a bit unsure, but he pulled off his gloves and slid them across the floor to her. She pulled them on, noticing that though he was shorter, his hands were slightly bigger than hers. All right, now loose the shirt. As Naruto went through the awkward motions of removing his shirt with only one working arm, he learned to fully appreciate his mask. It hid the blush caused by stripping in front of a girl. Sakura came over and began untying the bloody bandages. She pulled her medical kit out of her bag and put some more antibiotic on the wounds. How did you get so tan if you have to stay covered up all the time? He looked over his shoulder. Do you really think this is the best time to ask about something like that? Sakura shrugged. What does it matter? I'm asking, so are you going to answer? Naruto looked ahead, trying to ignore the light touches on his back. My room has a glass ceiling in it so that I can get sunlight during my down. What the hell was that? Sakura pulled some gauze out of her kit. I popped your shoulder back in place. Now stop whining and lift up your arms so I can bandage your back. Naruto did as he was told. You could have warned me. Sakura laughed as she began to wrap the bandages around his chest, being careful to avoid contact. If I had warned you, then it would have hurt more. She tied off the bandages. How do you feel now? Naruto rolled his shoulders a bit, causing Sakura to blush slightly as his muscles flexed and stretched. Better, but my shoulder is still a bit sore. Sakura rolled her eyes. Boys can be such wimps sometimes. Come here. Before Naruto could protest, she grabbed his shoulder and started rubbing. His face was so red by this point that it put tomatoes to shame. Sasuke smirked as he watched his two teammates. I see how it is. You just go after the boy with the best sob story at the time, huh, Sakura? The glare she shot at Sasuke could have made ice shiver, but when she looked away, her hand slipped. Before she could stop herself, her arm brushed against his shoulder. In that second of contact, she felt a sharp pain in her shoulder and the sting of antibiotics on her back. She reeled backwards in shock, falling onto the floor in a heap. Both boys snapped around to look at her in shock. Sakura, are you okay? I'm so sorry, this is all my fault. His blue eyes shone with concern and fear. I'm all right, Naruto. I only touched you long enough to feel what I just did, no big deal. Besides, it was my fault anyway. I should have been more careful. Naruto grabbed his shirt and put it on quickly in a desperate attempt to protect her. Can I have my gloves back, please? Sakura took them off and slid them across the floor just like he had done earlier. She watched as he thrust his shaking hands into the leather safety. I was right, you know. About what? He mumbled. I know what it felt like when I popped your shoulder back in. You were being a baby. The boys just looked at her in surprise for a minute. Then slowly they started laughing. Sakura soon joined them. Naruto had never been so relieved. Sakura had touched him and it wasn't the end of the world. She wasn't hurt and she didn't think of him as a monster. On top of that, he could still remember how soft her skin had been when it brushed against his shoulder. Kakashi's eyes opened slowly and he immediately regretted doing so. They were full of grit and his vision swam, making his stomach give an uncomfortable lurch. He carefully pushed himself into a sitting position, ignoring his body's protests. He hated chakra exhaustion. It felt like a bad hangover but without the fun night. His mouth was dry and his head pounded mercilessly. His visible eye cast about the room until it fell on his salvation, a glass of water and a pain pill. He took them and then began forcing his brain into gear. He remembered fighting Zabuza and a hunter Nin taking the body away. Something about that bugged him, but he chose to let it slide for the time being. He remembered seeing Naruto lying on the ground, pretty banged up from his rescue and being stuck in the middle of a Junin battle. Naruto would need some medical attention. Then everything went black, so how did he get into this room? The door slid open and Kakashi immediately went for a kunai, only to find that his weapons had been taken. Blue eyes looking down at him from the doorway were the only thing he could see of the intruder. Kakashi visibly relaxed. It was Naruto. So you're finally up. Everyone was really worried about you. Naruto sat down beside his sensei's bedroll. Kakashi noticed that his movements showed no signs of lingering injury. His other two students came in as well, taking places beside him. How you feeling, Kashi? The Cyclops shrugged lazily, though immediately regretted it as even that movement hurt. Okay, I guess, although I wish those painkillers would kick in faster. How about you? Who fixed your shoulder? Sakura-chan took care of it for me. She's really good at fixing injuries and she even thought of borrowing my gloves so that I wouldn't hurt her. Sakura smiled proudly at the compliment to her skill. Kakashi smiled. So nothing bad happened? Sakura shook her head. Everything went fine. Although my arms slipped when Sasuke-kun distracted me and I felt Naruto's shoulder getting popped back into the socket. He was being such a baby about it too. Kakashi laughed lightly. Well, I suppose it's easier to say that when the pain isn't real. All three genin looked confused. What do you mean not real? Naruto nodded at his pink-haired teammate. She felt it, doesn't that make it real? Kakashi thought for a moment. I suppose I never told you what it is like to touch you, did I? Naruto shook his head. I guess it never seemed important since I was reliving your experiences and you already knew how bad it was, but it's not the same. Naruto was puzzled. If they were his experiences, how could they be different for someone else? You see, Naruto, we only see and feel your memory. Each moment happens in seconds. This makes it harder to handle when going through your whole life because there is no time to recover, but it also makes it easier when going through short experiences because it is over in a flash. When we let go of you, our pain disappears because it was never real for us, whereas yours lingers. We don't physically go through your experiences, only mentally, so there is no lingering feeling after it is over. We can still remember everything we saw and felt just like you, but it isn't as strong because they aren't our memories. Naruto still looked confused as his teammates processed the information. I don't get it. It's like a genjutsu. Sasuke's thoughts had taken a dark turn. The technique his brother used on him was still fresh in his mind. Sakura shook her head. In theory, yes, but the Kagayaku is different from genjutsu. It's more like an echo of the pain. Kakashi nodded. That is a great way of putting it, Sakura. Now on to the important things. Where am I? How did we get here, and is there food? The three simultaneously slapped their foreheads in irritation. He had done it again. Kakashi could not get through one speech without being Kakashi. Sasuke was the first to recover and answer his sensei's questions. We are at Tazuna's house. I carried you and you had to drag your lazy ass to the kitchen. That word, drag, it bothered him. Why did he feel like he was missing something important? Kakashi's eye widened as the realization hit him. That hunter nin dragged Zabuza's body away. How could he have been so stupid? Naruto, help me up. After I eat, I'm taking you three out for training. Naruto wrapped one of his arms around his shoulder and began hoisting him off the bedroll. You do realize that Sasuke was just joking about the kitchen, don't you? He was grunting with the effort of lifting someone so much larger. Yes, I do, but I need to get you three training as soon as possible. Sakura, bring me that crutch over there. The rosette immediately followed the order. Kakashi adjusted it under his arm. Normally he would not be pushing himself like this, but he would not let anyone die while he was in charge. Not this time. He hobbled off to the kitchen, his team following him, confused by the un-Kakashi behavior. As they entered the kitchen, Tsunami smiled at them. Breakfast was on the table for everyone within minutes. Kakashi and Naruto both ate their food with inhuman speed like always, then began waiting for the others to finish. Kakashi-sensei, why are you so bent on training today? You should be resting. Kakashi made a bridge with his fingers. Sakura, tell me what you know about hunter nins. The girl did not understand why her sensei was dodging the question but decided to answer nonetheless. These were the only times when she could show her stuff. Hunter nin are the elite of their village. They track down and kill the missing nin of their country, destroying all evidence of the body so that none of their village's secrets will be revealed. Kakashi smiled. He loved having this girl on his team to explain things for him. And what did our hunter nin do with the body? He carried it away. So what? Sasuke was getting sick of this academy review session. He wanted answers and he was not known for his patience. The body being carried away is why we should be concerned. Hunter nin destroy the body on the spot regardless of who is watching, yet this one carried it away. So that would lead us to believe. His students sat there quietly, as did the family. Kakashi was about to let them in on his information when it finally dawned on Sakura. Zabuza is still alive. The family gasped in shock, having been told the whole story by Tazuna. Exactly. You know, I had my doubts when I first met you, Sakura, but you definitely are a smart one. This is why we have to train. I want all three of you to be at your absolute best next time we meet. Judging by Zabuza's reputation, that will be in about a week. Through the entire conversation, Tazuna's grandson Inari was getting more and more upset. His small fists clenched in anger as he listened to the ninja. Why do you bother? Gato will win, he always wins. The little boy ran out of the room, tears streaming down his eyes. Tsunami followed her son, but a door slamming deterred her. Tazuna sighed. I apologize for Inari. He has had much sadness in his life. Kakashi nodded at the old man. It's fine. Now you should be fine at the bridge for today, so I am going to train them. After that at least one of us will be with you at all times. Just be careful and everything will be fine. Now we need to go. Using his crutch for support, he pulled himself into a standing position once more and walked outside, his genin team trailing behind him. The going was slow due to Kakashi's injuries, but they didn't stop until they were deep in the forest surrounding the house. Today we will be working on chakra control by climbing trees. Naruto groaned while the other two looked confused. Kakashi-sensei, how is climbing trees supposed to help our chakra control? That is a very good question, Sakura. It will help because you are not allowed to use your hands. Again he got two very confused looks. Naruto, could you please demonstrate? I'm still a bit unsteady. The short boy sighed. Hi Kashi. He placed his hands in the ram seal and his eyes closed in concentration. A small cloud of dust rose around his feet, then with eyes snapping open he charged forward and ran up the tree. He was about halfway up when he lost his grip and fell back to the ground, flipping so that he wouldn't hit his head. Kakashi frowned at his son. Someone has been cutting corners on his training again. Naruto gave a nervous laugh, his hand immediately going behind his head. It was a nervous habit that Naruto had somehow managed to pick up. I'll get to you later. The silver-haired Junin turned away from his nervous son. Now, what you two just saw Naruto doing was a more difficult variation of the leaf exercise aptly named tree climbing. You simply gather chakra in the soles of your feet and use it to grip onto the tree. This is perfect for chakra control for two reasons. First, channeling chakra to the bottoms of your feet is more difficult than any other body part. Second, the mix of spiritual and physical energy must be perfect. Too little and you just slide off, too much and the tree breaks, blasting you away. Sasuke listened to the explanation but never took his eyes off of his diminutive friend. How come Naruto knows how to do this and we don't? Kakashi rolled his visible eye. I taught Naruto this exercise in his first year of training because his chakra control is abysmal. He has to work on it constantly because his chakra is so unmanageable. From what I just saw, he probably hasn't climbed a tree in 2 weeks. Why is his chakra so unmanageable? Because Naruto's chakra is very potent and there is a lot of it. Sakura was not very pleased with the rather vague answer to her question. She was about to probe for more details, but Kakashi threw 2 kunai that landed at the feet of both her and Sasuke. Now I want you two to climb as far as you can and mark your progress with these kunai. I'm going to have a little chat with Naruto about his training for the day. Sakura found the exercise extremely easy, making it to the first branch about 15 feet up and sitting down. She noticed deep imprint and a slash about 2 feet up on Sasuke's tree, meaning that he had used too much chakra. Kakashi turned from a sulking Naruto to see how his other charges were faring. He was surprised to see how far up Sakura had gone in one try. Well, it looks like the female of the team has the best grasp of chakra. Sakura smiled brightly at the compliment, but Sasuke gave an irritated growl. Don't worry Sasuke, you did better than Naruto on his first try. Now keep at it you two, Mr. doesn't want to practice, will be right with you. Naruto rolled his eyes and made about 50 kage bunshin. Each one ran up to a tree and started climbing. The real Naruto sighed as he got into a push-up position. You know that this could be counted as child abuse. Kakashi put his foot on Naruto's back. Shut up and give me 50. He didn't remove his foot as his student began his exercises. About an hour later found Sakura taking a break. Sasuke continued charging up the tree, gaining inches each time. The bunshins were almost making it to the top at a run by now, while Naruto was reduced to doing clapping push-ups under the watchful eye of Kakashi. Sakura didn't know where the boys got the energy, especially Naruto, who had spent the last hour doing sets of 50 in every kind of push-up imaginable while maintaining 50 clones. As he finished the last push-up, one of his clones finally made it to the top of a tree. It gave out a yell of triumph and then all 50 dispelled at the same time. Shouting in discomfort, Naruto grabbed his head and collapsed onto the ground. Oh man, major brain rush. Kakashi tapped the boy lightly with his foot. Too much information at once? The boy nodded as he pushed himself up. Good, maybe that headache will remind you why you don't shirk training. Now I want you to walk up that tree and alternate hanging squats and crunches in sets of 100 until I get all of you for lunch. Naruto glared at the silver-haired slave driver. This is cruel and unusual punishment, you sadist. The teacher gave an evil cackle. I know. A humph of irritation, and Naruto stomped over to the tree and walked up it without even pausing to focus his chakra. The power of youth shall prevail. Believe it. Kakashi flinched. Stop traumatizing me. Never. Youth. A-A-A-A-G-G-G-G-G-H-H-H-H-H. I'm going to get you for this, you little bastard. Naruto had already started doing the squats as he hung upside down from a branch. Revenge is unyouthful, Kakashi. The Junin was very near the point of pulling out his gravity-defying silver hair. I'm going to need therapy after this. Instead of making himself bald, he turned and started walking towards the house. There's that hip attitude again. Kakashi flinched. He hated it when Naruto got on these streaks. He was far too good at imitating the eccentric Junin. Guy he could handle, but seeing the boy he took care of acting like Guy was another story. A few hours later saw both Sakura and Sasuke on the ground panting. Sasuke had only just made it 3/4 of the way up the tree and now felt like passing out. Naruto was still hanging upside down doing his assigned workout, though his clothes were sticking to him from sweat and his breathing was ragged. Both resting genin watched him with some sick fascination. Where does he get the energy? Sakura didn't know how to answer Sasuke. Naruto, why don't you come down and take a break? You look like you are going to pass out. It was true. His legs and stomach screamed in protest at every movement, and each one to more effort than the last. His clothes were drenched with sweat and his mask was suffocating, but he pressed on. I'm not stopping until that pervert gets back here. I won't give him the satisfaction of knowing that he got me to give up. I always finish the training he gives me, and I'm not going to stop that now. Sasuke's eyes widened as he watched his friend push onward. He could tell that it was only pure stubbornness that kept Naruto's body from shutting down. The black-haired boy got up and focused his chakra. If Naruto wasn't going to stop, then neither was he. Again he began running at the tree. A few minutes later Kakashi strolled into the clearing to see the boys still going. All right, you two, that's enough training for now. You all need some food and a break. Naruto still hung upside down while Sasuke returned to the ground, very ready for some food. Is this all, Kashi? I could keep this up all day. His blue eyes closed slowly and the chakra in his feet dissipated, leaving him to fall towards the ground. In a burst of strength she didn't know she possessed, Sakura leapt forward and broke his fall. Kakashi sighed. Let's get the baka back to the house. He'll be fine with some food and rest. Between Sasuke and Sakura, Naruto's weight was easy to bear and they made it back to Tazuna's with little incident. Once inside they left Naruto's unconscious form in the living room and went to wash up. Kakashi stayed and pulled the mask off of Naruto's face so that he could breathe freely, revealing the blonde hair and boyishly handsome face. Then he removed his shirt so that Naruto lay half naked on the floor. Kakashi knew that Naruto passed out largely due to the heat caused by his clothing coupled with exhaustion. As he went to grab a canteen of water from the kitchen, a head of pink hair peeked around the corner. Sakura approached Naruto's sleeping form with all the silent grace that comes with being a female ninja. She crouched down next to him and looked at his peaceful face, her lips curved in a smile. I see you've found out who my roommate is. Sakura jumped at the sound of Kakashi's voice but quickly regained her composure when he didn't seem mad. I've known since the day after the demon brothers attacked. Kakashi's eye closed in one of his smiles. I figured you would be the one to figure it out. He walked towards the two teens on the floor. Does Sasuke know as well? Sakura's eyes returned to her snoozing friend. I didn't tell him, if that's what you're asking. It is Naruto's secret to reveal, not mine. Kakashi looked on the young girl with even more respect. She really had matured in these past few days. Sakura was blossoming right before his eyes. He saw her hand move towards the sunny yellow hair of his charge but stopped it before her fingers found its softness. Don't want you to accidentally touch his skin. Who knows what you might see? The girl frowned as she pulled her hand back. It isn't fair that he has to live like this. No, it isn't, but I'm very glad he found a friend in you, Sakura. Who knows, maybe one day you will be ready to touch him and share his burden as I do. Before Sakura could respond, he poured out half of the water in the canteen onto Naruto's face, making the teen wake up spluttering in surprise. Welcome back to Earth, Naruto. He handed the rest of the water to the boy, who began to drink greedily. Then blue eyes landed on the third person in the room and Naruto almost choked on the cool liquid. Sakura-chan, what are you doing here? The girl laughed at the rather comical expression on his face. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Now relax Naruto, I already knew that you lived with Kakashi-sensei. This caused the fox boy to glare at his guardian. Hey, don't look at me like that. You said so yourself that she was smart. She figured it out on her own. Now I suggest that you finish that water and put on a fresh mask before anyone else walks in. Naruto bolted down the liquid like he did his food and took the fresh mask in Kakashi's hand. Within seconds the bright hair and handsome face were concealed beneath thin black cloth. I'm going to run and change my clothes. I must reek from all that sweat. With that he went to his room passing Sasuke on the way. The genin turned to watch him go and his sharp eyes fell on something strange. Where did the wound on his back go? There isn't even a scar there. Kakashi flinched. He was hoping that neither of them would notice that. Now he had to make up a believable cover story on the spot. He racked his brain furiously before smiling as he landed on pure gold. Well, Naruto can't be touched by most people, right? So that means no doctors. Because of that, his immune system and cell regeneration are far above that of a normal person, which is why he didn't die of blood loss when I got rid of the poison. His healing process gets stronger every year and eventually I think he'll be able to recover from anything short of cutting his head off. It's just his body evolving to survive. His was very pleased to see that both his students accepted the explanation he had come up with. Naruto definitely owed him big time, although it was his fault that he passed out and was seen without a shirt on in the first place. Naruto came back fully clothed in a fresh outfit. Hey everybody, is lunch ready? I'm starving. They all went into the kitchen to see Tsunami setting out bowls of food for everyone. Ah, food. You are by far the most wonderful person I have ever seen, Tsunami-san. The woman giggled at the boy's enthusiasm while her son rolled his eyes in irritation. Tazuna walked through the door. I've been working like a dog all morning and nothing will make me happier than a nice homemade lunch. Well then you better sit down and eat, Dad, because these ninja of yours have been training all day and they might just eat everything I've made. Lunch was a nice affair with Naruto and Kakashi pulling their usually speed eating routine as everyone else ate at a normal place and talked. Naruto went through 4 helpings before he was satisfied. The pink-haired girl looked at him in surprise. She dieted constantly to maintain her figure and here he was tossing back enough to feed 2 and still keeping a trim physique. Where do you put it all, Naruto? His blue eyes looked at her filled with confusion then glanced back down at his plate as realization dawned. Oh, well I have a really high metabolism to begin with. Plus Kakashi makes me do conditioning every time I act up, which is a lot, so I burn about as many calories as I take in. Speaking of physical exercise, after passing out from what I put you through you will not be taking part in training this afternoon. The boy was shocked. You can't be serious, Kashi. I'm fine, I can take the work. Kakashi shook his head. Naruto, it has only gotten hotter out there since this morning and with the amount of clothes you're wearing you risk heat stroke. You've already pushed yourself to the breaking point once today, I'm not going to let you do it again. Instead you will be meditating while Sasuke continues climbing. If he has any problems I'm counting on you to help him out. While you two are doing this I'm going to be teaching Sakura how to walk on water. Sakura looked up in shock. You're going to be teaching me something new on my own? Kakashi smiled. Out of the entire team you have the best chakra control and you won't be getting any further by continuing to climb trees. It wouldn't be fair if I let their ability hold you back. Sakura had never felt so proud of herself. She was never considered the most advanced in anything ninja related before. Naruto smiled at her like he always did when she succeeded at something while Sasuke looked a bit jealous. Inari looked at all these foolish ninja that worked so hard to win an unbeatable fight. He knew better though. It didn't matter how strong they were, people like Gato always win. He stood up quickly and ran to his room to cry for his fallen hero. Everyone watched him go but no one followed him this time. Tsunami looked down, her eyes filled with sadness, knowing that her words would not break through to her shattered little boy. Kakashi cleared his throat. Well, we better get back to training. No body gets stronger by sitting on their ass all day. With that the ninja left the house, leaving the small family to themselves for the time being. If there was one thing Naruto hated it was meditating. Sitting still for hours on end didn't work for the energetic blonde boy. Sasuke had made great progress after Naruto had given him some advice Kakashi gave him when he was learning. The dark-haired boy was almost to the top running now. Sasuke was determined to have the exercise down by the end of the day no matter what it took. He would not be the weak link in his team. He was an Uchiha with a mission, weak was not an option. He had just made it to the top when his energy gave out and he fell to the ground, pushing off other trees to slow his progress. When he landed it was to see Naruto in a handstand with his eyes closed. I thought Kakashi told you to meditate so that you didn't get heatstroke. I am meditating. I just choose to do so in a way that improves my balance too. Besides, what Kakashi doesn't know won't kill him. The black-haired boy shook his head in wonder at his strange teammate. What makes you work so hard? I could ask you the same thing. The dark boy's eyes became distant. You know about the Uchiha massacre, right? Well, what people don't know is that my older brother is the one who did it. He killed our parents and then used an advanced form of the Sharingan to make me see the whole thing. I vowed that no matter what, one day I would be strong enough to kill him and avenge my clan. The shorter boy flipped his legs down and sat before his brooding friend. Do you really think that your parents want you to survive on hatred and need for vengeance? I mean, I've never had parents myself, but I always believed that the only thing they wanted was for me to be happy. Sasuke couldn't deny the wisdom of his friend, but that didn't kill his desire for his brother's death. I don't think I could ever be happy while he still breathes. Itachi ruined my life. Naruto's eyes shone with empathy. I understand how much it sucks to be alone. But you shouldn't let that keep you from living. Perhaps you should think of your goal in a different way. Instead of killing him for vengeance, kill him to bring him to justice. It was weird to hear the usually hyper boy sound so wise and calm. Sasuke decided to shove the advice away until he was alone. You never answered my question. Naruto pulled off one of his gloves and held his bare hand out towards Sasuke. The boy's black eyes focused on the exposed flesh, nervous of what was going to happen. I've been alone my entire life, and all but a few people in the village hate me. I've been attacked more times than I can remember and my bloodline evolved as a way for me to protect myself and survive. Why do they hate you? Naruto had been prepared for this question. I was born on the day the Kyuubi was defeated. Because of that I became the village scapegoat. With the demon gone they needed somebody to take out their frustration out on. I was just the one unlucky enough to be chosen. I fight to protect the few people who see me for who I really am and to change the opinions of everyone else. He pulled back his hand and put his glove back on. The Hokage always says that I was smiled upon by Kami, because only an angel could forgive what I've been put through so easily. That isn't true though, I don't forgive as easily as he thinks, I just refuse to stoop to their level. Sasuke looked at his friend in shock. If Naruto was telling the truth then his life had been much more difficult than his own. I don't think I could ever be as noble as you, so for now I'm going to cling to my revenge. But one day I hope I'll be strong enough to shake your hand without the gloves. Naruto smiled at him. I always knew there was more to you than the emo exterior. Sasuke stood to return to his tree climbing. Now you just sound like Kakashi Naru-chan. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.